The debt she paid in blood. They say every marriage begins with a promise. Mine began with a price tag, $500,000 paid in full, signed in desperation. I thought marrying a stranger to save my dying mother made me noble. Turns out, it just made me his. Adrian Voss doesn't do love, he does ownership. And the night I collapsed in his arms, bleeding and broken, everything we thought we knew shattered. Because impossible things happen in the dark. And some debts? They can't be paid with money alone. Want to see how far this story reaches? Hit that like button and drop your city in the comments below. Let's see where Lena's story finds you. Bant. The fluorescent lights of Sam's 24-hour mart buzzed like dying wasps, casting everything in that particular shade of sickly white that made even healthy people look corpse-adjacent. Lena Carter stood behind the counter at 2:47 a.m., her reflection in the security monitor showing exactly what she felt. A 23-year-old woman running on fumes, coffee that tasted like battery acid, and spite. Her feet screamed inside her worn sneakers. 12 hours down, 2 to go. Then she'd have exactly 45 minutes to get to her day job at the medical supply warehouse, where she'd smile through another 8 hours of lifting boxes that weighed more than her self-respect. The door chimed. Lena didn't look up from the inventory sheet she was pretending to care about. "We don't have public restrooms," she said automatically. "I'm not here for the restroom." The voice cut through the buzzing lights like a knife through warm butter, smooth, cold, and sharp enough to draw blood. Lena's head snapped up. Marcus Chen stood in the doorway, all-expensive suit and dangerous smile. Adrian's right hand, his fixer. The man who'd handed her the contract that saved her mother's life and signed away her own. "Store closes at 4, Lena said, even though they both knew that wasn't why he was here. "You've got an hour to grab whatever overpriced garbage you need." Marcus didn't move toward the shelves. He didn't move at all, actually, just stood there blocking the exit like a well-dressed wall. "Mr. Voss sent me." "Congratulations. Want a medal?" "He wants you home." The word home landed wrong in her mouth. Home was the cramped apartment she shared with her mother before the cancer. Home was before the medical bills stacked higher than hope. Home sure as hell wasn't Adrian Voss's sterile penthouse, where she had a room she barely slept in, and a contract that owned her for the next 3 years. "I'm working," Lena said flatly. "You're exhausted." "That's what happens when you work 2 full-time jobs to avoid spending time with a man who bought you like a used car." Marcus's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Pity, maybe. Or just acknowledgement of a truth they both knew. "He noticed you haven't been back to the penthouse in 4 days. "So?" "So he's concerned," Lena laughed, sharp and bitter. "Concerned about what? His investment? Tell him the merchandise is fine. Still breathing, still fulfilling contract obligations by existing and not embarrassing him publicly. That's all the fine print required." "Lena, it's Mrs. Voss during business hours, remember?" She turned back to her inventory sheet, gripping the pen hard enough to hurt. "You wrote that clause yourself." The silence stretched. Then Marcus sighed, a sound that carried the weight of dealing with stubborn people for too long. "He'll come himself if I return without you." That made her look up. "He wouldn't." "You want to test that theory at 3 in the morning in a convenience store in this neighborhood?" No, she absolutely did not. Because Adrian Voss showing up here would raise questions she couldn't answer. Her coworkers didn't know about the marriage. The contract specified discretion until Adrian decided otherwise. She was just Lena, the girl who always took extra shifts, who never complained, who was saving money for something she never specified, the something being her mother's continued existence. "Fine," Lena slammed the pen down, "but I need to close out my register and already handled." Marcus nodded toward the back room, where her manager Jerry emerged looking confused and significantly more awake than he had 5 minutes ago. "Mr. Voss purchased your remaining shifts for the week. Jerry's been compensated for the inconvenience." The bottom dropped out of Lena's stomach. "He did what?" "Consider it a bonus." Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. "He's generous with his investments." Jerry waved awkwardly. Lena? This gentleman explained you have a family emergency. Take the time you need, okay? Your shifts are covered." She wanted to scream, wanted to tell Jerry this wasn't generosity, it was control. Adrian removing her choice again because he could. Because money made things simple when you had enough of it. Instead, she untied her apron with shaking hands and grabbed her jacket from beneath the counter. "After you," Marcus said, gesturing to the door. The October air hit like a slap after the store's overheated interior. Lena's breath misted in front of her face as she followed Marcus to the black SUV idling at the curb, the same one that had been appearing outside her workplace with increasing frequency over the past week, the same one she'd been pretending not to notice. "How long has he had someone watching me?" she asked as Marcus opened the rear door. "Does it matter?" "Yeah, actually, it does." Marcus met her eyes over the roof of the car. For a moment, the professional mask slipped, and she saw something almost human underneath. "Since the beginning, Lena. He's always been watching." The words sent ice down her spine that had nothing to do with the weather. The drive to Adrian's building took 20 minutes through empty streets that looked different at this hour, sharper somehow, like the city had shed its daytime skin to reveal something more honest underneath. Lena pressed her forehead against the cool window and tried not to think about what awaited her. 3 weeks. That's how long it had been since the wedding that wasn't really a wedding, just signatures on paper in a lawyer's office, witnessed by strangers who were paid to forget what they saw. Adrian in a suit that probably cost more than her annual salary. Her in the best dress she owned, which was just good enough to not be an embarrassment. "You understand the terms?" his lawyer had asked. She'd understood. 3 years of marriage in exchange for $500,000 deposited directly to Mercy General Hospital for her mother's treatment. Experimental therapy, the kind insurance called elective, because apparently not dying was a choice. Discretion required. No media, no drama, no claiming affection that didn't exist. And the other clause, the one that made her skin crawl even reading it, the marriage will remain unconsummated. Separate residences permitted, but not required. Public appearances as needed. Translation: you're a wife on paper only. Don't get confused about what this is. She hadn't. Not for a second. "We're here," Marcus said unnecessarily as the SUV pulled into the underground garage of Adrian's building. All glass and steel and the kind of modern architecture that screamed money without saying anything interesting. The private elevator rose so smoothly, Lena's stomach barely registered the motion. 68 floors in under a minute. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor, because of course it did. The doors opened directly into Adrian's space. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, backlit by a million lights that made him look less like a man and more like a silhouette cut from darkness itself. He didn't turn as she entered. "Leave us," Adrian said quietly. Marcus disappeared without a word. The elevator doors closed with a soft hiss that sounded too much like a trap sealing shut. Lena stayed near the entrance, arms crossed over her chest. "You can't just buy out my shifts because you feel like it." "I can." Adrian's voice remained even, almost disinterested. "I did." "That's not—" "You've worked 63 hours in the past 4 days." He finally turned, and the city lights cast his face in sharp relief, all hard angles and colder eyes. "When exactly were you planning to sleep?" "That's none of your business." "You're my wife. That makes it precisely my business." "But I'm your contracted employee," Lena shot back. "There's a difference." "Is there?" Adrian moved away from the window, each step deliberate and controlled. He had that way about him, like everything he did was calculated 3 moves ahead. "Because the contract states you'll maintain your health and well-being. Collapsing from exhaustion violates those terms." "I'm not going to collapse." "You were swaying behind that counter. Marcus said you nearly dropped a customer's change twice." Heat flooded Lena's face, anger and humiliation mixed together. "So you are having me watched. Would you prefer I didn't care whether you lived or died?" "I'd prefer you didn't pretend this is about caring." The words burst out louder than intended. "You wanted a wife for whatever weird rich person reason requires one. I needed money to save my mother. That's the transaction. Don't dress it up as concern." Something flickered across Adrian's face, there and gone so fast she might have imagined it. "You haven't been back here in 4 days. The contract doesn't require me to live here. It requires you to be available for public appearances." "Haven't missed one." Lena counted on her fingers. "The charity gala on Tuesday, where I smiled next to you for 90 minutes and made small talk with people who think my shoes are quaint." The business dinner on Thursday with your investors, where I ate food I couldn't pronounce and pretended to understand conversations about portfolio diversification. I've fulfilled every obligation. And then disappeared to a convenience store in the middle of the night. I have bills, Adrian. The hospital money covers Mom's treatment, not rent or utilities or food or I transferred money to your account. He said it like stating a fact, not offering a gift. 50,000. Use it. Lena's hands clenched into fists. I don't want your money. You married me for my money. For my mother, not for myself. That's different. How? Adrian took another step closer. They stood less than 10 feet apart now, close enough that she could see the faint shadows under his eyes that suggested he wasn't sleeping much either. Money is money. Whether it saves your mother or feeds you makes no practical difference. It makes a difference to me. Why? Because taking money directly felt like being owned instead of employed. Because her mother's life was worth the sacrifice, but her own comfort wasn't. Because accepting his money for her personal needs would blur lines she desperately needed to stay sharp. Because some part of her, the part she tried to ignore, knew that if she let herself depend on him for everything, she'd start forgetting this wasn't real. I don't have to explain myself to you, Lena said finally. No. Adrian's expression remained unreadable. But you do have to stop destroying yourself to avoid me. I'm not. You are. He moved closer still, and she caught the scent of whatever expensive cologne he wore. Something dark and woody that probably cost more per ounce than her hourly wage. Marcus said you were barely coherent when he arrived. When was the last time you ate? Lena's mind went blank. I had coffee. Coffee isn't food. It has calories. Lena. Her name sounded different in his mouth, less like an identifier and more like something he was tasting for the first time. When did you last eat? She couldn't remember. Yesterday? The day before? Time had blurred into a continuous loop of work and more work, fueled by caffeine and stubbornness. Her silence answered for her. Adrian's jaw tightened. Sit down. That wasn't a request. You don't give me orders. I do when you're clearly incapable of basic self-preservation. He gestured to the massive dining table that could seat 12 and had probably never been fully used. Sit. Down. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the fact that her feet genuinely hurt and the thought of sitting sounded like heaven. Maybe it was the way Adrian's voice carried an edge of something that wasn't quite anger, but wasn't indifference either. Whatever the reason, Lena sat. Adrian disappeared into the kitchen. She heard the sounds of drawers opening, the refrigerator, the microwave beeping. Minutes later, he returned with a plate of pasta and some kind of cream sauce that smelled so good her stomach betrayed her with an audible growl. He set it in front of her without comment, then took the seat across from her with nothing but a glass of water for himself. Eat, he said. Lena stared at the plate. Did you cook this? The chef prepared it earlier. I reheated it. You have a chef? Yes. Who makes food you just reheat? Among other things, Adrian's expression remained neutral. Are you going to analyze the socioeconomic implications of domestic help, or are you going to eat before you pass out? She picked up the fork. The first bite tasted like everything she'd been denying herself, rich and warm and substantial. The second bite went down easier. By the third, she wasn't tasting anymore, just consuming, her body taking over now that food was actually available. Adrian watched her in silence. Stop staring, Lena said around a mouthful of pasta. I'm making sure you don't choke. I know how to eat. Evidence suggests otherwise. She shot him a glare that would have been more effective if she wasn't currently shoving another forkful into her mouth. Why do you care? I told you. The contract? Screw the contract. Lena set down her fork hard enough to clink against the plate. Nobody works this hard to protect an investment. You could replace me tomorrow if I actually collapsed. Find another desperate woman who needs money. So why, Adrian? Why do you actually care? The silence that followed felt heavy enough to crush her. Then Adrian leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him in that way powerful men did when they wanted to look thoughtful instead of calculating. Do you know why I chose you? I submitted the best application for contract wife. Lena's voice dripped sarcasm. My references were impeccable? I saw you at the hospital. That stopped her cold. What? 6 months ago. You were in the waiting room of the oncology wing, filling out paperwork. I was there for a donation meeting with the board. Adrian's eyes never left hers. You were crying. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind, where you're trying so hard not to fall apart that you're barely breathing. Lena's chest tightened. She remembered that day. The day the doctor had explained the experimental treatment, the costs, the timeline. The day Hope had shown up with a price tag she couldn't afford. A nurse came to tell you your mother was asking for you, Adrian continued, and you wiped your face, stood up, and smiled like nothing was wrong, like you weren't drowning. I watched you walk into her room, and I thought... He trailed off. For the first time since she'd met him, Adrian Voss looked uncertain. Thought what? Lena whispered. That you were strong enough to survive me. The words hung in the air between them, strange and heavy and impossibly honest. I don't understand, Lena said. No. Adrian's expression shuttered closed again. You don't, but you will. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something shifted in his face, tension that hadn't been there before. What? Lena asked. Nothing that concerns you. If it involves you, it involves me. That's how this works, right? Public marriage means public problems. Adrian's fingers tightened around the phone. Someone's been asking questions about our marriage, about you. Ice flooded Lena's veins. What kind of questions? The kind that suggests someone's looking for leverage. He stood abruptly. You're staying here tonight. No arguments. I have work tomorrow. Canceled. Both jobs. You can't just, I can, and I have. Adrian's voice went hard, the momentary vulnerability vanishing like it had never existed. Until I know who's digging and why, you don't leave this building without security. Lena shot to her feet, ignoring how her vision swam slightly from the sudden movement. I'm not a prisoner. No, you're my wife. There's a difference. Is there? She threw his earlier words back at him. Because right now it feels pretty fucking similar. Adrian crossed the space between them so fast she barely registered the movement. Suddenly he was there, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in the gray. Listen to me very carefully, he said, voice low and dangerous. There are people in this world who would hurt you to hurt me. People who don't care that this marriage is a business arrangement. People who only see an opportunity, a wife, a weakness, something to exploit. I can take care of myself. Can you? His hand came up, not touching her but hovering near her face. When was the last time you slept more than 3 hours? When was the last time you weren't running on nothing but caffeine and spite? You're barely standing right now, Lena. What exactly would you do if someone decided you were worth kidnapping? She wanted to argue, wanted to push back against his logic and his control and his absolute certainty that he knew better. But she was swaying on her feet, and they both knew it. I hate you, she whispered. I know. Adrian's hand dropped. Guest room is down the hall, second door on the left. There are clothes in the closet that should fit. Get some sleep. And if I refuse? Then I'll carry you there myself. He said it without heat, just stating a fact. But I'd rather not. You've had a long night. Lena wanted to fight more, but her body had other ideas. Her knees wobbled and Adrian's hand shot out to steady her elbow. Easy, he said. Don't touch me. He released her immediately, hands up. Guest room, now, before you actually collapse and prove my point. She went. Not because he told her to, but because standing was becoming a theoretical concept rather than a practical one. The hallway seemed longer than it should be, the door heavier, but she made it inside and closed the door behind her with more force than necessary. The guest room was exactly what she'd expected. Expensive, impersonal, and clearly unused. The bed looked like a cloud. The clothes in the closet all had tags still attached. Lena stripped off her work clothes, left them in a pile on the floor in a small act of rebellion, and pulled on a t-shirt that was definitely not guest room standard. It was soft, worn, and smelled faintly of that same dark cologne. One of Adrian's shirts. She should take it off, should put on the brand new pajamas hanging in the closet instead. She was asleep before she could finish the thought. Lena woke to sunlight streaming through windows that were definitely not hers, and a moment of pure panic before memory returned. Adrian's penthouse, the guest room, the conversation that felt more like a confrontation. Her phone showed 2 p.m. Shit. She bolted upright, then immediately regretted it as her head spun. Shit, shit, shit. She'd missed both shifts. Jerry was probably freaking out, and the warehouse. Her phone had 17 missed calls. 3 from Jerry, 11 from Marcus, and 3 from a number she didn't recognize. Before she could listen to the voicemails, someone knocked on the door. "Come in," Lena called, expecting a housekeeper, or maybe Marcus again. Adrian entered carrying a tray with more food: fruit, toast, eggs, orange juice. He looked like he'd been awake for hours, sharp and put together in a way that should be illegal before 5 p.m. "You're awake," he observed. "You let me sleep for 12 hours. You needed it." He set the tray on the nightstand. "Eat. Is that your only vocabulary? Eat, sit, stay?" Lena pushed hair out of her face. "I'm not a dog." "No, but you take instruction about as well as one." Despite herself, Lena almost smiled. Almost. "I need to call my jobs. Explain." "Already handled. Jerry knows you have the flu. The warehouse knows you had a family emergency." Adrian moved to the window, hands in his pockets. "Both excused. No penalties." "You can't keep solving my problems with money." "Can I?" "No, it's..." Lena struggled for the right words. "It's taking away my choices." "You chose this." He turned to face her. "When you signed the contract, when you married me, every choice after that is just consequences." That's a depressing way to look at life. It's a realistic one. Lena studied him, really looked, maybe for the first time. Adrian Voss was objectively handsome in that cold, carved way some men were. But there was something else there, something underneath the control and the money and the power, something exhausted. "Why did you really need a wife?" she asked. "I told you, business reasons." "Bullshit." His eyebrow lifted. "Excuse me?" "Nobody goes through this much trouble for business reasons. You could hire an actress, pay her to show up to events, never see her otherwise." Lena pulled her knees to her chest. "But you chose someone desperate, someone who'd have to stay, someone who couldn't just walk away when things got complicated. And your point? What are you hiding from?" The question landed like a stone in still water. Adrian's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted, a tension that hadn't been there before. "Eat your breakfast, Lena." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer you're getting." He moved toward the door. "There's a doctor coming at 4 to check you out. Don't argue." "I'm fine." "You collapsed last night." Lena's brain stuttered. "What?" "After I left you, I heard the sound through the door, your phone hitting the floor." Adrian's voice stayed level, clinical. "I found you unconscious on the carpet. The doctor I called suspected dehydration and exhaustion, but I want a full workup to be sure." Horror flooded through her. She didn't remember any of that. Didn't remember falling, didn't remember Adrian finding her, didn't remember anything except hitting the bed and... "How long was I out?" 3 minutes. Long enough." "And you didn't take me to a hospital because questions get asked in hospitals. Records get made. And I don't know yet who's looking for information about you." Adrian's hand tightened on the doorframe. "So a private doctor comes here. Discreetly." Lena wanted to argue. Wanted to rage against his high-handed decisions and his assumption that he knew better. But she'd collapsed. Actually lost consciousness. And didn't that prove his point better than any argument could? "Fine," she said quietly. "The doctor can come." Adrian nodded and left without another word. Lena sat in the too comfortable bed, wearing his shirt, eating food his chef had prepared, in a guest room that cost more than her yearly salary, and tried very hard not to think about how quickly she was losing track of where the cage ended and safety began. Dr. Sarah Chen arrived at exactly 4 p.m., punctual, professional, and carrying enough medical equipment to stock a small clinic. She was maybe 40, with kind eyes, and the kind of competent energy that made you trust her immediately. "Mrs. Voss," she greeted, shaking Lena's hand. "I'm Dr. Chen. Your husband called about your collapse last night." The words, your husband, felt wrong in her mouth. It was just exhaustion. I'd been working too much. Let's make sure. Doctor. Chen set up her equipment with practiced efficiency. When did you last have a full physical? Lena tried to remember. 3 years ago? Maybe 4? Dr. Chen's expression suggested this did not surprise her. Let's start with basics. Blood pressure, temperature, heart rate. The examination was thorough and mostly boring until Dr. Chen asked when her last period was. Lena's mind went blank. I don't know. They've been irregular since I started working double shifts. Stress, probably. How irregular? I haven't had one in maybe 2 months, but that's happened before when things got crazy. Dr. Chen made a note. Any nausea? Fatigue beyond the obvious? I'm always tired, and I thought the nausea was from too much coffee on an empty stomach. Dr. Chen pulled out a small pregnancy test from her bag. Just to rule it out. Lena's laugh came out strangled. That's not possible. Humor me. No, I mean, it's literally not possible. I'm not. She trailed off, heat flooding her face. My husband and I, we don't. I'm not here to judge your marriage, Mrs. Voss. I'm here to make sure you're healthy. Dr. Chen's voice stayed gentle. But if there's any chance, even a small one, we should check. There's no chance, Lena said firmly. The marriage is. We have separate rooms. We don't. She gestured vaguely. That. Okay. Dr. Chen put the test away. But I'd still like to run a full blood panel. Check your iron levels, thyroid, make sure the exhaustion isn't masking something else. Fine. The blood draw was quick and professional. Dr. Chen promised results within 24 hours, gave Lena a lecture about proper nutrition and sleep that sounded a lot like Adrian's, and left with instructions to rest. Lena sat on the bed after the doctor departed, staring at nothing. A pregnancy test. Like that was even remotely possible. Except, no, there was no except. She and Adrian had never been in the same room longer than necessary, never touched beyond the occasional hand-holding at public events, never even accidentally brushed against each other. Her marriage was a contract, nothing more. So why did Dr. Chen's question sit in her stomach like a stone? 23 hours later, Dr. Chen called. Lena was in Adrian's library, because apparently he had a library, complete with first editions and books that probably cost more than cars. She'd been trying to read, trying to pretend everything was normal, trying not to think about how Adrian had barely spoken to her all day beyond checking if she'd eaten. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Mrs. Voss, it's Dr. Chen. I have your blood work results. And? A pause. Is your husband with you? Lena's stomach dropped. No, why? I think you should both hear this together. I don't. Lena's hand tightened on the phone. Just tell me, please. Another pause, longer this time. You're pregnant, Mrs. Voss. About 7 weeks. The words didn't make sense, couldn't make sense. That's impossible, Lena heard herself say. The test is quite clear. Your HCG levels are. No, Lena stood up, pacing. You don't understand. I can't be pregnant. We haven't. Mrs. Voss, I understand this might be unexpected, but where's Adrian? Lena's voice came out sharp. Where is he right now? I don't know. I called you first because. Lena hung up. Her hands shook as she pulled up Adrian's contact. The phone rang once, twice. What's wrong? His voice was immediate, alert. Where are you? Downstairs, meeting? What does. Come up. Now. Lena. Now. She hung up before he could argue. The minutes waiting felt like hours. Lena paced the library, her mind racing through impossibilities. She couldn't be pregnant. They'd never. Wait. The charity gala. 3 weeks ago. She'd had champagne. Too much champagne, actually, because watching rich people throw money at causes while her mother fought for her life had required lubrication. Adrian had driven her home, helped her inside because her heels kept catching. She remembered his hands on her waist, steadying her, remembered laughing at something he said. When had Adrian ever made her laugh? Remembered, oh God, remembered his mouth on hers in the elevator, remembered stumbling into his bedroom, not the guest room. Remembered his hands in her hair, her dress on the floor, his voice in her ear saying something she couldn't quite recall. Remembered waking up alone the next morning in her own bed, head pounding, assuming she'd dreamed the whole thing. The door opened. Adrian stepped inside, still in his suit, looking concerned and controlled and completely unprepared for what she was about to say. "Dr. Chen called," Lena said. "And?" "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and true all at once. Adrian went very, very still. "That's not possible." "That's what I said." "No, I mean it's actually not possible." His voice was tight, controlled. "I can't have children. Medical condition. I've known since I was 20. "Well, apparently modern medicine missed something," Lena shot back, "because Dr. Chen seems pretty fucking certain. There has to be a mistake, a false positive, or 7 weeks, Adrian, 7 weeks pregnant." Lena watched understanding dawn on his face. "The gala. 3 weeks ago, She couldn't finish the sentence. "We were drunk," Adrian said quietly. "I know. You don't remember. Not all of it. Neither do I." He moved to the window, hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. "This shouldn't be possible." "You keep saying that like it changes anything." He turned to face her, and for the first time since she'd met him, Adrian Voss looked completely lost. "I've been tested. Multiple times. The doctors were very clear, scarring from an infection when I was younger. Less than 1% chance of fertility. Congratulations on being the 1%. This isn't funny." "Do I look like I'm laughing?" Lena's voice cracked. "I married you for money to save my mother. That was the deal. That was supposed to be all of it. And now I'm carrying your baby, which shouldn't exist in a marriage that isn't real, and I have no idea what happens next." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Adrian crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. Lena should have pushed him away, should have maintained the distance that kept this bearable. Instead, she broke. Sobs tore out of her chest. For her mother, for the impossibility of her situation, for the baby growing inside her that wasn't supposed to exist. Adrian's arms tightened around her, and she felt his heart hammering against her cheek. "I've got you," he murmured into her hair. "I've got you." And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, Lena let herself believe it might be true. They stayed like that for longer than either of them would admit. Adrian's arms around her, Lena's tears soaking through his expensive shirt, the impossible truth settling into their bones like cold water. When she finally pulled away, her face was blotchy and his collar was ruined. "Sorry," she muttered, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Don't be." Adrian's voice was rough around the edges, like he'd swallowed gravel. He moved to the bar cart in the corner, poured 2 fingers of whiskey, then stopped. "Can you drink?" With the "no." The word came out flat. "I can't." He set down the second glass and downed both shots himself. "We need to talk about this." "What's there to talk about?" Lena sank into one of the leather chairs that probably cost more than her car. "I'm pregnant. You're the father. We're married. Sounds like everything worked out exactly as planned, except for the part where none of it was planned at all." "Lena, do you remember it?" The question burst out before she could stop it. "That night, do you remember what happened?" Adrian's jaw tightened. He poured another drink, didn't touch it. "Pieces." "What pieces?" "Does it matter?" "Yeah, actually." Lena's hands twisted in her lap. "Because I remember you kissing me in the elevator. I remember your bedroom. I remember—" She stopped, heat flooding her face. "Other things. But then I woke up in the guest room alone, and you never said a word about it. Because I thought I'd crossed a line." Adrian finally turned to face her. "You were drunk. I was drunk. It shouldn't have happened." "But it did." "Yes. And you just, what, pretended it didn't?" "I thought that's what you wanted." His voice went hard. "You could barely look at me the next day. You took extra shifts, avoided me, acted like nothing had changed. What was I supposed to do? Bring it up? Force a conversation you clearly didn't want to have?" Lena opened her mouth, closed it, because he wasn't wrong. She had avoided him, had buried herself in work and pretended the hazy memories were just dreams, because facing the alternative meant admitting something she wasn't ready to admit. That for those few hours, she hadn't felt trapped. She'd felt wanted. "So what now?" she asked quietly. Adrian moved to the window, his silhouette dark against the city lights. "The contract didn't account for this situation. You think I don't know that? I'm not suggesting—" He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. "We need to figure out what we're doing, about the baby, about the marriage, about everything. I'm keeping it." The words came out fierce, protective. In case that wasn't clear. "I never thought otherwise." "Good." Lena stood, paced. "But I'm not staying trapped in this penthouse like some Victorian mistress. I have a life, Adrian. A mother who's still in treatment, bills I'm still paying, jobs I actually like. The jobs where you work yourself into exhaustion. The jobs that are mine, that I earned, that have nothing to do with you or your money or any of this." She gestured wildly at the apartment. "I need them. I need something that's just mine, even if it puts you and the baby at risk." "You said someone was asking questions. You never said who or why." Adrian's expression shuddered. "Because I don't know yet." "Bullshit." Lena crossed her arms. "You know something. I can tell when you're holding back." "Can you?" Something almost like amusement flickered across his face. "We've known each other 3 weeks, Lena. You can read me already?" "Better than you think." They stared at each other across the library, tension crackling in the air between them. Finally, Adrian sighed. "There are people in my line of work who don't appreciate my methods," he said carefully. "Your line of work being import-export, primarily luxury goods. And the truth?" His eyes narrowed. "What makes you think that's not the truth?" "Because nobody needs the level of security you have for luxury goods. Because Marcus carries a gun, don't look surprised, I noticed. And because men who deal in legal businesses don't get married on paper to strangers." Lena took a step closer. "So who are you really, Adrian Voss?" The silence stretched so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he moved to his desk, unlocked a drawer, and pulled out a folder. He tossed it onto the coffee table between them. "Read it," he said. "Then we'll talk." Lena picked up the folder with shaking hands. Inside were articles, police reports, documents stamped confidential in bold red letters. She skimmed the first page, then the second, her stomach dropping with each line. Adrian Voss. Suspected connection to organized crime, money laundering, racketeering, arms dealing. "Jesus Christ," she whispered. "Keep reading." She did. But the further she got, the stranger it became. Because interspersed with the accusations were other things. Witness testimonies that fell apart under scrutiny. Evidence that mysteriously disappeared. Cases that never made it to trial. And underneath it all, a different pattern. Charitable donations to hospitals. Anonymous tips that led to trafficking busts. Warehouses that burned down right before police could find the illegal goods inside. "I don't understand," Lena said finally. "I work in the gray." Adrian's voice was flat, clinical. "My family built an empire on things that weren't quite legal, but weren't quite illegal either. Import-export, yes, but of the kind that doesn't always come with proper paperwork. When my father died 5 years ago, I inherited the business and its reputation. And I've been systematically dismantling it ever since." He moved closer, took the folder from her hands. The trafficking, the weapons, the drugs, all of it. Gone. But it takes time, and it makes enemies. People who profited from my father's work don't appreciate me cutting off their revenue streams. "So you're what, a criminal with a conscience?" "I'm a man trying to clean up someone else's mess without getting killed in the process." Adrian's eyes met hers. "The marriage helps, makes me look stable, legitimate, harder to target a family man than a lone operator. That's why you needed me." Understanding crashed over her. Not for appearances at galas, for protection. "Among other things, and you didn't think I deserved to know this before I signed the contract?" "Would you have said no?" Adrian's voice went sharp. "If I told you the truth, that marrying me might put a target on your back, but here's $500,000 anyway, would you have walked away?" Lena wanted to say yes, wanted to believe she had limits, lines she wouldn't cross even for her mother. But they both knew the answer. "That's what I thought," Adrian said quietly. I'm not a good man, Lena. I've done things I'm not proud of. I've hurt people. But I've never lied to you about what this was. A transaction. You got your money. I got my cover. That was supposed to be enough. And now? Now you're carrying my child. His hand moved to her stomach, hovering but not touching. My child, who shouldn't exist, who was supposed to be impossible. And everything I thought I understood about this situation just became a hell of a lot more complicated. Lena's throat tightened. You could walk away, pay me out, dissolve the marriage, disappear. I wouldn't stop you. No. The word came out hard, absolute. That's not happening. Why not? Because, he stopped, jaw working, because I don't abandon my responsibilities. Is that what we are? Responsibilities? What else would you call it? She didn't have an answer for that. Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and whatever he saw made his expression go cold. Marcus needs me. Don't leave the apartment. Adrian, I mean it, Lena. He was already moving toward the door. Not until I figure out who's asking questions and what they want. You're too exposed. I'm not a prisoner. No, but you're pregnant with my child, and that makes you valuable to people who want to hurt me. He paused in the doorway. I'll be back in 2 hours. Marcus is staying on this floor. If you need anything, call him. Then he was gone, and Lena was alone with a baby growing inside her, and a husband who dealt in gray morality and danger. She looked down at her still flat stomach. Well, she murmured, this is a hell of a way to start a family. The baby, predictably, didn't answer. Lena spent the next hour trying and failing to process everything. She called her mother's nurse, got the usual update. Stable, responding to treatment, asking about Lena. She didn't mention the pregnancy. Didn't know how to explain that she was married and pregnant by a man who might be a criminal or might be something else entirely. Tell her I'll visit soon, Lena said, and hung up before the nurse could ask questions. The penthouse felt too big and too small all at once. She wandered from room to room, seeing it differently now. The security cameras weren't just about privacy, they were about protection. The reinforced windows weren't about noise reduction. And the panic room she'd discovered by accident last week wasn't paranoia, it was necessity. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Mrs. Voss? A woman's voice, professional and cold. This is Detective Sarah Morrison with the NYPD. I'd like to ask you some questions about your husband. Lena's blood went cold. It's just routine. We're investigating some financial irregularities in his business dealings. Nothing to worry about. A pause. Unless there's something you're worried about? I have nothing to say without a lawyer. That's certainly you're right, though it does make one wonder what you're protecting. The detective's voice sharpened. You married Adrian Voss 6 weeks ago. Very quickly, very quietly. Some might say suspiciously. Some might mind their own business. Murder is my business, Mrs. Voss. The word landed like a bomb. What? 3 men associated with your husband's former business operations have turned up dead in the past 2 months. Execution style. Professional work. Detective Morrison's tone stayed level. And your husband has very good alibis for all 3 incidents. Almost too good. I don't know anything about that. Don't you? Or are you just smart enough not to ask questions? This conversation is over. Lena's hand shook on the phone. One more thing. Does the name Vincent Caruso mean anything to you? No. He's been asking around about you, offering money for information, where you work, where you live, what your connection to Adrian Voss really is. The detective paused. Vincent Caruso was my father's primary competitor, a very dangerous man. And if he's interested in you, Mrs. Voss, you're in more trouble than you know. The line went dead. Lena stood frozen, phone still pressed to her ear, as terror crystallized in her gut. The danger Adrian had mentioned wasn't theoretical. It had a name, Vincent Caruso, and he was actively hunting her. She dialed Adrian. No answer. Tried again. Nothing. Marcus. She needed Marcus. But before she could find his number, the lights went out. Not just in the library, the entire apartment plunged into darkness so complete she couldn't see her own hand in front of her face. The backup generator should have kicked in immediately. They didn't. Lena's breath came fast and shallow. This wasn't a power outage. This was something else. She heard it before she saw it. The sound of the elevator arriving at the penthouse level, doors sliding open with a mechanical whisper that shouldn't be possible because the elevator required a key card Adrian kept on him at all times. Someone was here. Lena ran. No thought, just pure instinct driving her toward the panic room she'd discovered. Her hips slammed into furniture she couldn't see, pain shooting through her side. But she kept moving. The panic room was in Adrian's office, behind the bookshelf. She just needed to... Mrs. Voss, a man's voice smooth and cold. There's no need to run. She ran faster. Her hands found the bookshelf, fumbling for the switch Adrian had shown her once in passing. There, the panel slid open with a soft click. Lena threw herself inside and slammed it shut behind her, fingers scrabbling for the lock. It engaged with a heavy thunk just as something slammed into the other side. Clever, the voice said, muffled now through steel-reinforced walls. But ultimately pointless. We're not here to hurt you, Mrs. Voss. We just want to talk. Fuck you, Lena gasped. A pause. Then, your husband has something that belongs to Vincent Caruso. Files, specifically. Very incriminating files. We believe he's hidden them somewhere. We also believe you might know where. I don't know anything. That's disappointing, but perhaps motivation will help. The sound of something dragging across the floor. Do you know what thermite does to steel? It's quite fascinating, very hot, very effective at cutting through locked doors. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. The panic room was supposed to be impenetrable. Adrian had said so, but he'd also said a lot of things that were turning out to be more complicated than advertised. She looked around the small space. Emergency phone on the wall. She grabbed it, but the line was dead. Supply cabinet, water, protein bars, first aid kit, and a gun she had no idea how to use. The walls closed in, the darkness pressing against her eyes. And then her stomach cramped, sharp and sudden, like someone had reached inside and twisted. Lena gasped, doubling over. Not now, please, not now. Another cramp, harder this time, heat spreading between her legs. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Outside, the sound of metal on metal began, steady, rhythmic, relentless. They were cutting through. Inside, Lena felt her body betraying her in the worst possible way. She grabbed the gun with shaking hands, clicked off the safety the way she'd seen in movies, and pointed it at the door. Her other hand pressed against her stomach, where her impossible baby was possibly dying, and she made herself a promise. If she was going down, she was taking these bastards with her. The cutting stopped. Silence fell so complete Lena could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Then, gunfire. Not inside the panic room, but outside. Rapid bursts, shouting, the thud of bodies hitting the floor. Lena! Adrian's voice, raw and desperate. Lena, where are you? She couldn't answer, couldn't move. Another cramp seized her, and she bit down on her lip hard enough to taste blood. More gunfire. Then silence. She's in the panic room, Marcus said, closer now. Give me a second to override the lock. Faster! The door slid open, and Adrian filled the entrance, his shirt splattered with blood that probably wasn't his expression somewhere between fury and terror. His eyes found her crumpled on the floor, the gun still clutched in her hand, and something in his face cracked. Lena. He dropped to his knees beside her. Jesus Christ, are you hurt? The baby, she managed. Something's wrong with the baby. Adrian's face went white. Marcus, get Dr. Chen here now. I don't care if you have to kidnap her. There's blood, Lena whispered, because there was. Not a lot, but enough. Enough to make her chest tight and her vision blur. Adrian, I think I'm losing... No. His hands cupped her face, forcing her to look at him. You're not losing anything. You're going to be fine. The baby's going to be fine. Do you hear me? She wanted to believe him, but her body was screaming otherwise, and the cramping was getting worse, and she'd never been so scared in her entire life. I can't lose this baby, Lena said, tears streaming down her face. I know it's impossible, and we're impossible, and this whole situation is insane, but I can't... I know. Adrian gathered her into his arms, careful and gentle, and nothing like the cold man who'd married her 6 weeks ago. I know, I've got you. Marcus reappeared with Dr. Chen, who must have been somewhere nearby because no way could she have gotten here this fast otherwise. The doctor took one look at Lena and started barking orders. Lay her down, elevate her feet, get me my bag. What's happening? Adrian's voice was steady, but his hands shook where they gripped Lena's. Possibly a threatened miscarriage, possibly just stress-related cramping. Dr. Chen worked with efficient calm. I need to do an ultrasound. Mrs. Voss, can you tell me when the cramping started? 5 minutes ago, maybe less. Everything was blurring together. And the bleeding? Light pink. Okay. Dr. Chen pulled out portable ultrasound equipment. This is going to be cold. The gel hit Lena's stomach, and she flinched. Adrian's hand found hers, squeezed hard enough to hurt. The ultrasound wand moved across her skin, and Dr. Chen's eyes fixed on the small screen. Seconds stretched into eternities. Then, a sound, fast and rhythmic and impossibly strong. There! Dr. Chen turned the screen so they could see. A tiny blob, barely visible, with a flickering light at its center. Heartbeat is strong, 145, which is normal range. Lena's sob was half relief, half terror. The baby's okay? The baby's fine, Dr. Chen smiled. The cramping and spotting are concerning but not uncommon in early pregnancy, especially after stress. You need complete bed rest for at least 48 hours. No excitement, no stress, and absolutely no more armed invasions. Adrian's laugh was brittle. Noted. I'm serious, Mr. Voss. Dr. Chen's expression hardened. Your wife has been through significant trauma tonight. Her body is trying to protect this pregnancy, but it can only do so much. If you want this baby to survive, you need to give her a safe environment. She'll have it. Will she? Dr. Chen packed up her equipment. Because from where I'm standing, safe isn't the first word I'd use to describe your lifestyle. Doctor, I don't care who you are or what you do. My job is that baby. She pointed at Lena's stomach. And right now that baby needs stability. So whatever war you're fighting, end it. Or that child won't live long enough to take their first breath. The words hung in the air like a curse. Dr. Chen left instructions and medications and a stern warning to call if the bleeding increased. Then she was gone, and Lena was left in Adrian's arms, in a penthouse that now had bullet holes in the walls and dead men in the hallway, and a future that looked more impossible than ever. Who were they? She asked quietly. Caruso's men. Adrian's voice was flat. They've been watching the building, waiting for me to leave. How did they get up here? Someone inside helped them, someone with access. His jaw tightened. I'll find out who. And then what? Then I'll make sure they never threaten you again. The words should have scared her. Instead, they settled something deep in her chest. Because Adrian Voss might be dangerous, might be morally gray, might be everything she'd been taught to avoid. But he was also the man holding her like she was precious. The man who'd come back for her. The man whose child was growing inside her against all odds. I need to tell you something, Lena said. What? That night, the gala. I remember more than I said. She looked up at him, saw her own vulnerability reflected back. I remember you asking if I was sure. I remember saying yes. I remember... She stopped, heat flooding her face. Wanting it, wanting you, even though I knew I shouldn't. Adrian's expression softened in ways she'd never seen. Lena, I'm not asking for anything. I know this is still just a contract. I know the baby doesn't change the fundamental arrangement. But I thought you should know that night wasn't just drunken mistake, at least not for me. The silence that followed felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Then Adrian kissed her. Not rough or demanding, but soft, careful, like she was something that might break. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling, and for a moment the world narrowed to just this. His mouth on hers, his heartbeat against her palm, the impossible baby between them. When he pulled back, his eyes were darker than she'd ever seen. This changes everything, he said. I know. I can't let you go now. I know that too. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep you and that baby safe, even if it means... He stopped, jaw working. Even if it means becoming the monster everyone thinks I am. Lena touched his face, felt the tension there. You're not a monster. You don't know what I'm capable of. Then show me. She held his gaze. No more secrets, no more half-truths. If we're doing this, really doing this, I need to know who you are. Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, but not tonight. Tonight you rest. Doctor's orders. He lifted her easily, carried her to his bedroom, not the guest room, his actual bedroom, and laid her on sheets that smelled like him. Then he stretched out beside her, one hand resting protectively on her stomach. Talk to me, Lena said. I'm too wired to sleep. About what? Anything. Everything. I don't care. So he did. He told her about growing up in his father's shadow, about learning the business before he understood what it really meant, about the day he realized the family empire was built on suffering. He told her about the first time he killed a man, self-defense, but it still haunted him, about the systematic dismantling of everything his father built, one carefully orchestrated move at a time. And somewhere in the middle of his confession, with his voice a low rumble against her ear and his hand warm on her stomach, Lena fell asleep. She dreamed of a little girl with gray eyes and her stubborn chin, running through a garden that didn't exist yet, laughing at something her father said. And when she woke hours later to weak sunlight filtering through bulletproof glass, Adrian was still there, watching her, protecting her, choosing her. The morning after almost losing everything tasted like copper and second chances. Lena woke to Adrian's hand still resting on her stomach, his breathing deep and even beside her. For a man who probably hadn't slept more than 4 hours, he looked surprisingly peaceful. Or maybe she was just seeing him differently now, less like the cold stranger who'd bought her compliance and more like the father of her impossible child. She shifted carefully, trying not to wake him, but his eyes opened immediately. Alert, ready. You should still be asleep, he said, voice rough with exhaustion. So should you. Someone needs to keep watch. Adrian, there are literally armed guards outside the door. Marcus checked on us 3 times during the night. I know because I was awake for 2 of them. Lena propped herself up on one elbow. You can't protect me if you collapse from exhaustion. I'm fine. You're running on fumes and adrenaline. I recognize the signs. I lived that way for months. She touched his face, felt the tension there. Let Marcus handle security for a few hours. Come back to bed. Something flickered in his expression. Is that an order, Mrs. Voss? It's a strong suggestion from the woman carrying your miracle baby. Adrian's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close, when you put it that way. But instead of lying back down, he sat up, ran both hands through his hair. I need to tell you something. Lena's stomach tightened. That sounds ominous. Vincent Caruso isn't just my father's old competitor. He was his partner. Adrian's voice went flat, clinical. They built the business together, split territories, split profits, kept each other honest through mutually assured destruction. What changed? My father got sentimental in his old age. Started thinking about legacy, about what he'd leave behind. He kept records, detailed records, of every illegal transaction, every payoff, every body. Insurance, he called it. Adrian stood, paced to the window. When he died, those records disappeared. Caruso thinks I have them. Do you? Yes. The single word hung between them, heavy with implications. Where? Lena asked. Somewhere safe. Somewhere even Marcus doesn't know about. He turned to face her. Those files are the only thing keeping Caruso from going to war. As long as he thinks I might release them if he moves against me, he stays cautious, probes my defenses, sends men to test security, but doesn't commit to a full assault. Until last night, Adrian agreed, which means something's changed. Either he's gotten desperate or he's found leverage he thinks is worth the risk. Me. Lena's hand moved to her stomach. I'm the leverage. You're pregnant. That makes you a different kind of target. Not just a way to hurt me, but a way to control me. His expression went dark. If Caruso gets his hands on you, he can make me do anything. Hand over the files, dismantle my operations, put a bullet in my own head, whatever he wants. So what do? We end it. Adrian moved back to the bed, sat on the edge. I've been playing defense for 5 years, slowly dismantling my father's empire while keeping Caruso at arm's length. But that strategy doesn't work anymore. Not with you and the baby at risk. Meaning? Meaning I go on offense. Release the files, let law enforcement handle him, and deal with the fallout. Lena studied his face. You'd go to prison. Possibly. Definitely. If those files implicate Caruso, they implicate you too. Your father's son, his heir. No way you come out clean. I know. Adrian's jaw tightened. But you and the baby would be safe. That's what matters. Bullshit. The word came out sharp. You don't get to play martyr when there's a child involved. Our child needs a father, not a prison visit twice a month. Better a living father in prison than a dead one in the ground. How about neither? Lena grabbed his hand, forced him to look at her. There has to be another way. There isn't. I've run every scenario, consulted every contact I have. This ends two ways. I give up the files and destroy myself, or I don't, and Caruso eventually finds a way through my defenses. He pulled his hand free, stood again. At least this way, I control the timing. When? Today. Marcus is already arranging the drop with the FBI. By tonight, every major news outlet will have copies. By tomorrow morning, Caruso's empire crumbles and mine goes with it. The certainty in his voice made her chest tight. You've already decided. I decided the moment Dr. Chen showed us that heartbeat. Adrian moved to his dresser, started pulling out clothes. I need to shower, meet with my lawyers, make sure everything's airtight. You should rest. Dr. Chen said, I know what Dr. Chen said. Lena threw off the covers, ignoring the slight cramping that reminded her of last night's terror. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. You don't get to make that decision. I do when it involves your safety. Adrian. She crossed to him, placed both hands on his chest. I'm not fragile. I'm not some damsel you need to lock in a tower. If you're about to blow up your entire life, I'm going to be there when you do it. Lena, no arguments. We're married, remember? For better or worse. Or in our case, for contractual obligation and accidental pregnancy. She tried for a smile, failed. But we're in this together now. So where you go, I go. He looked at her for a long moment, something complicated moving behind his eyes. Then he kissed her forehead. You're stubborn as hell. I married a criminal. Stubborn is probably the least of my qualities. Former criminal, hopefully. Adrian's hand settled on her waist. And for the record, you're terrifying when you're determined. Good. You should be scared. This time, he actually smiled. Noted. 2 hours later, Lena sat in a conference room that looked like every legal drama she'd ever seen. Mahogany table, leather chairs, walls lined with law books nobody probably read anymore because of Google. Adrian's lawyers were a matched set of expensive suits and careful expressions, and they kept glancing at her like she was a bomb that might explode, which, given the circumstances, wasn't entirely inaccurate. Let me be very clear about what you're proposing, the lead attorney said. Richard. Something. Lena hadn't caught his last name. You want to voluntarily provide evidence to federal prosecutors that will almost certainly result in criminal charges against you. Yes, Adrian said. Evidence that implicates you in conspiracy, money laundering, and possibly accessory to murder. I'm aware. And you understand that spousal privilege won't protect Mrs. Voss if prosecutors decide she has relevant information about your activities. Lena's head snapped up. What? Richard turned to her with the kind of patient expression lawyers used on civilians. If the government believes you have knowledge of your husband's criminal enterprises, they can compel your testimony. Spousal privilege only applies to private communications between married partners, not to observed criminal activity. But I don't know anything about his business. You know about the attack last night. You know about the files. You know about Vincent Caruso. Richard ticked off points on his fingers. That alone makes you a potential witness, possibly even a co-conspirator in the eyes of an aggressive prosecutor. She's not a co-conspirator, Adrian cut in. She had nothing to do with any of this. But she married you after you'd already begun dismantling your father's operations. A prosecutor could argue she was brought in to provide cover, make you look legitimate. That's insane. That's federal prosecution. Richard leaned back in his chair. They'll go after anyone they think can give them information or leverage. And a pregnant wife with medical bills and a sick mother? That's leverage. Lena's hands clenched in her lap. So what are you saying? I'm saying that if Mr. Voss proceeds with this plan, You need your own attorney, someone who's looking out for your interests, not his. My interests are his interests, not in the eyes of the law. Richard's expression softened slightly. Mrs. Voss, I understand you're trying to support your husband, but if this goes sideways, you could end up facing charges yourself. At minimum, you'll be dragged through interrogations, depositions, possibly a grand jury. Is that really what you want while pregnant? No, it absolutely was not. But the alternative was watching Adrian sacrifice himself while she stayed safely on the sidelines, and that felt worse somehow. I'll get my own lawyer, Lena said finally, but I'm not changing my mind. If Adrian's doing this, I'm there. The lawyers exchanged glances. Richard sighed. Then we need to talk about immunity. The next 3 hours were a masterclass in legal complexity that made Lena's head spin. Immunity deals, plea bargains, witness protection, asset forfeiture, terms that sounded abstract until Richard explained what they meant in practice. Adrian could lose everything: the penthouse, the business holdings, the offshore accounts, all of it seized by the government as proceeds of criminal enterprise. What about the hospital payments? Lena asked suddenly. My mother's treatment. That money came from Adrian. Richard and Adrian exchanged a look. It's complicated, Richard said carefully. Uncomplicated. If the government determines the money was derived from illegal activity, they can claw it back. The hospital would have to return it, and any treatments rendered would become your mother's debt. The floor dropped out from under her. You're saying my mother could die because the money that's keeping her alive might be confiscated. We're saying it's a possibility we need to plan for. Lena turned to Adrian, who looked like he'd been expecting this. You knew. I suspected. And you didn't think to mention it? I was trying to find a way around it. By what? Going to prison and hoping the prosecutors felt generous? Her voice climbed. My mother's treatment was the whole point of this marriage, Adrian. The only reason I said yes. If that money gets taken back, it won't. Adrian's voice went hard. I'll make it part of the deal. Immunity for you, protection for the hospital funds, no prosecution for your mother's care. You can't guarantee that. Watch me. Richard cleared his throat. Mr. Voss, the prosecutors have no obligation to agree to those terms. In fact, they'll likely see the hospital payments as exactly the kind of money laundering they want to prosecute. Then we don't give them the files. Adrian, Lena started. No. He cut her off. I won't let your mother die because I'm trying to do the right thing. We find another way. There is no other way. The words burst out louder than intended. You said it yourself. This ends with you giving up the files or Caruso eventually winning. Those are the options. Then I choose option 3. There is no option 3. There is now. Adrian stood abruptly. Richard, contact the prosecutors. Tell them I want to negotiate. Full immunity for Lena, the hospital payments are untouchable, and I'll consider handing over the files, but only after those terms are locked in writing. They won't agree to that. They will if they want what I have badly enough. Adrian moved toward the door. Set up a meeting. Tomorrow. Adrian, wait. Lena followed him into the hallway outside the conference room. You can't just demand immunity for me. That's not how this works. It's how it works when I have the only evidence that can take down one of the biggest criminal organizations on the East Coast. You're assuming they care more about Caruso than they do about you. I'm assuming they care about their conviction rate. Caruso's been untouchable for 30 years. I'm offering him on a silver platter. Adrian's expression was cold, calculated. They'll take the deal. And if they don't? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. They left the law offices with Marcus and 2 other security guards forming a tight perimeter. The SUV ride back to the penthouse was tense and silent. Lena stared out the window at a city that suddenly felt hostile, every face a potential threat, every car a possible tail. I need to see my mother, she said quietly. Not today. Adrian, doctor, Chen said bed rest. Seeing your mother means leaving the building, which means exposure. It's not safe. My mother thinks I'm working extra shifts to save money. She doesn't know I'm married, doesn't know about the baby, doesn't know any of this. Lena turned to face him. If everything falls apart tomorrow, I need to tell her the truth first. Adrian's jaw worked. Fine, but Marcus goes with you and you're in and out in 30 minutes. An hour, 45. Deal. Mercy General Hospital looked exactly the same as it had 6 weeks ago when Lena had signed away 3 years of her life, sterile, fluorescent, and smelling faintly of disinfectant and desperation. But everything else had changed. She wasn't the same terrified girl anymore, scraping together hope from nothing. Now she was a married woman carrying an impossible baby and walking into a potential federal investigation that could destroy everything she'd fought to build. "You okay?" Marcus asked as they rode the elevator to the oncology wing. "Not even a little bit. For what it's worth, Boss isn't usually this reckless. You've got him off balance." Lena glanced at Marcus. "Is that good or bad?" "Depends on whether you survive it." But his expression was almost kind. "He cares about you. I've known Adrian for 12 years and I've never seen him like this about anyone." "Like what?" "Scared." Marcus held her gaze. "He's not scared of Caruso or the feds or prison. He's scared of failing you." The words settled somewhere deep in Lena's chest as the elevator doors opened. Her mother's room was at the end of the hall, the same private room the hospital had moved her to after the first payment cleared. Lena paused outside the door, gathering courage. "I'll be right here," Marcus said, taking up a position against the wall. Lena pushed open the door. Her mother looked better than she had in months. Color in her cheeks, actual strength in her movements as she reached for the water cup on her bedside table. The experimental treatment was working. That $500,000 was buying time, buying hope, buying a future that might actually include her mother at her wedding. At a real wedding, not the contract signing in a lawyer's office. "Lena!" Her mother's face lit up. "Sweetheart, I wasn't expecting you today." "I know. I needed to see you." Lena moved to the bed, took her mother's hand. "How are you feeling?" "Better every day. Dr. Harrison says the latest scans show significant improvement." Her mother squeezed her fingers. "Whatever you've been doing to pay for this, whatever jobs you've been working, it's worth it. I'm going to beat this thing." Guilt twisted in Lena's gut. "Mom, I need to tell you something." "That sounds serious." "It is." Lena sat on the edge of the bed. "I'm married." Her mother's eyes went wide. "What?" 6 weeks ago. To a man named Adrian Voss. It was fast and complicated, and I didn't tell you because— She stopped, tried again. "Because I didn't want you to worry." "Lena Marie Carter, you got married and didn't invite your own mother?" "It wasn't that kind of wedding. It was just papers and lawyers and—" Lena's voice cracked. "I married him to get money for your treatment." The silence that followed felt like drowning. Then her mother's hand tightened around hers. "Tell me everything." So she did. The contract, the arrangement, the carefully maintained distance. She left out the criminal aspects, the danger, the attack last night. But she told her mother about the pregnancy, about the impossibility of it, about how nothing was what they'd planned. "And you love him," her mother said when Lena finished. "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to. I can hear it in your voice." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "My baby girl, married and pregnant. I should be angry you didn't tell me. I should lecture you about making deals with strangers. But you saved my life. However it happened, whatever the arrangement was, you gave me a chance to live." Her mother pulled Lena into a hug that smelled like hospital soap and home. "So instead of being angry, I'm just grateful and terrified. Because marriage is hard enough without starting it as a business transaction." "I know." "Do you love him, Lena? Really?" The question hung in the air between them. Lena thought about Adrian's hands on her stomach, his voice in the dark confessing sins, his absolute certainty that he'd do anything to keep her and their baby safe. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I might be starting to." "Then that's enough for now." Her mother pulled back, studied her face. "You look exhausted. Are you taking care of yourself?" "Trying to." "Try harder, for the baby's sake, if not your own." Her mother's hand moved to Lena's still flat stomach. "My grandchild. I'm going to meet my grandchild." The simple certainty in those words made Lena's chest tight. "You are. I promise." They talked for another 20 minutes, about baby names and nursery colors and all the normal things expectant mothers discussed. Lena didn't mention that she might be a federal witness by tomorrow, that the money paying for this hospital room might vanish, that the baby's father was negotiating with prosecutors to stay out of prison. Some truths could wait. Marcus knocked on the door right at the 45-minute mark. "Mrs. Voss, we need to go." Lena hugged her mother one more time, breathing in the familiar scent, memorizing the feel of her arms. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, sweetheart. Bring your husband to meet me soon, okay? I want to see the man who caught my impossible daughter." "Soon," Lena promised, and left before the tears could fall. The ride back to the penthouse was quiet until Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, swore under his breath. "What?" Lena asked. "Boss wants us to take the long route. There's activity near the building. Might be Caruso's people, might be cops, might be nothing. Which means definitely something. Yeah." Marcus changed directions, taking streets Lena didn't recognize. Probably means the prosecutors leaked that Adrian's negotiating. Caruso will want to move before the files go public. How long do we have? Hours, maybe. A day if we're lucky. That's not enough time to secure immunity or protect the hospital money, or... Lena stopped as cramping seized her stomach. Not as bad as last night, but bad enough to make her gasp. Marcus heard. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, just cramping, doctor. Chen said it was normal after stress." "Boss is going to kill me if something happens to you on my watch." "Then let's make sure nothing happens." But Lena's hand moved to her stomach, protective and terrified in equal measure. They made it back to the building without incident, took the private elevator to the penthouse, and found Adrian in his office with papers spread across every surface. He looked up as they entered, his eyes going immediately to Lena. "You're pale," he said. "I'm fine." "You're lying." He crossed to her in 3 strides. "What happened?" "Just some cramping. It passed." Lena tried for a reassuring smile. "I'm following doctor's orders. See? Sitting down right now." She sank into the nearest chair before her legs could give out. Adrian knelt in front of her, his hands on her knees. "We're leaving," he said. "What?" "Tonight. I have a safe house upstate that's not connected to any of my known properties. We'll go there, wait out the negotiation remotely, and only come back when it's safe." "Adrian, running makes you look guilty." "I don't care how it looks. I care about keeping you and our baby alive." His hands tightened. "Caruso knows about the pregnancy now. Last night proved that. Which means he knows exactly how to hurt me." "So we run? For how long?" "As long as it takes." "That's not a plan. That's hiding. It's survival." Adrian stood, started pacing. "I've been playing this wrong from the beginning, trying to dismantle everything while staying in the open, thinking I could control the situation through fear and leverage. But Caruso's desperate now, and desperate men take risks I can't predict. So we give him what he wants, release the files tonight, let the chips fall where they may, and watch your mother lose her treatment? Watch you get dragged into interrogations while pregnant? Watch our entire future crumble because I tried to do the right thing?" Adrian shook his head. "No, I'm done playing by rules that don't apply to men like Caruso." "What does that mean?" "It means there's a third option I didn't mention earlier." His expression went cold, empty. "I kill Vincent Caruso." The words landed like stones in still water. "You can't be serious," Lena whispered. "I've never been more serious." "Adrian, that's murder. It's self-defense. He's actively hunting my wife and unborn child. Any jury would understand." "You won't get a jury. You'll get caught and sent to prison for life." "Not if it's done right." Adrian moved to his desk, pulled out a file. "I know where Caruso lives, where he works, where he'll be tonight. I know his security protocols, his blind spots, his routines. I've been tracking him for 5 years. I could end this tonight and be back before morning. And then what? You think his organization just dissolves? They'll come after you for revenge." "Let them. Without Caruso, they're disorganized. I can handle fractured crews." "You're not thinking straight." Lena stood, moved to him. "You're scared and exhausted and desperate, and that's making you consider things the real Adrian Voss wouldn't consider." "How do you know what the real Adrian Voss would do? You've known me 6 weeks." "Well, I know you've spent 5 years dismantling your father's empire instead of expanding it. I know you married a stranger to look legitimate when you could have just hired an actress. I know you collapsed when you heard our baby's heartbeat."
She grabbed his face, forced him to look at her. I know you're not a killer, Adrian, not like this. Then what do you suggest? Because I'm out of ideas that keep you safe. We stick with the original plan.
Negotiate immunity, protect the hospital money, release the files, trust the system. The system doesn't protect people like us. Then we make it. Lena's voice went fierce. We fight for immunity, we fight for protection, and we do it together. No more trying to sacrifice yourself. No more playing hero. We're a team now, remember? Adrian stared at her for a long moment. Then something in his expression cracked, and he pulled her into his arms.
I don't deserve you, he murmured against her hair. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. His laugh was rough, exhausted. When did you get so stubborn? I've always been stubborn. You just weren't paying attention. I'm paying attention now. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the wreckage of their choices. Outside, the city glittered with lights and danger, and a future that remained terrifyingly uncertain.
But inside, in the space between heartbeats, Lena felt something shift. This wasn't love yet. Love took time and trust, and more than 6 weeks of knowing someone. But it was the beginning of something, a foundation built on honesty and terror, and the impossible baby growing between them. We'll figure this out, she said quietly. Yeah. Adrian's arms tightened. We will. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, Lena almost believed it. The meeting with federal prosecutors was scheduled for 10 the next morning in a nondescript office building downtown that probably housed a dozen fronts for a dozen different agencies. Lena woke at 6, her stomach in knots that had nothing to do with morning sickness and everything to do with walking into a room full of people who could destroy her life with a signature. Adrian was already awake, standing at the window in sweatpants and nothing else. His back a map of tension she could read from across the room. You didn't sleep, she said. Neither did you. He didn't turn around. I heard you get up 3 times. Bathroom, pregnancy does that. And anxiety. That too. Lena wrapped the sheet around herself, padded over to stand beside him. The city stretched out below them, already awake and moving. Somewhere down there, Vincent Caruso was planning his next move. Somewhere else, prosecutors were sharpening their questions, and here they stood, caught between law and lawlessness, with a baby between them that shouldn't exist. I've been thinking, Adrian said quietly. That's usually dangerous. I should go alone today. You stay here with Marcus. We already had this conversation. That was before I spent all night running scenarios. He finally turned to face her. The prosecutors are going to push. They'll try to separate us, question you without me present, find inconsistencies in our stories. And if they think for 1 second that you're lying to protect me, they'll threaten you with obstruction charges. So we tell the truth. The truth makes you look complicit. Adrian's hands settled on her shoulders. You married me knowing I was connected to criminal enterprises. You accepted money that came from illegal sources. You're living in a penthouse purchased with laundered funds. On paper, you're exactly what they're looking for. Someone to flip, someone to use against me. I'm not flipping on you. I know that. But they don't. His thumbs traced circles on her collarbone, a gesture that would have been soothing if his eyes weren't so worried. And pregnant women in interrogation rooms make mistakes, say things they don't mean, agree to things they shouldn't. You think I can't handle it. I think you shouldn't have to. Adrian pulled her closer. Stay here. Let me deal with this. If it goes south, you're protected. Marcus has instructions to get you out of the city, set you up somewhere safe with enough money to last until the baby's born. Stop planning my escape like I'm not standing right here. Someone needs to plan for worst-case scenarios. And someone needs to tell you that I'm not abandoning you the first time things get hard. Lena pushed back enough to meet his eyes. I'm going to that meeting. I'm sitting beside you while they ask their questions, and I'm watching them agree to immunity and protection for the hospital funds because that's what's going to happen. You don't know that. Neither do you, so we might as well face it together. Adrian studied her face, something complicated moving behind his eyes. Then he kissed her forehead. You're impossible. I learned from the best. They showered separately, Adrian's rules, something about maintaining focus, and dressed in clothes that screamed respectable. Lena in a navy dress that would have been perfect for a corporate interview, Adrian in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Marcus appeared at 8 with coffee for Adrian and herbal tea for Lena, plus a bagel she didn't want but ate anyway because the baby needed food, even if her stomach was threatening rebellion. The drive downtown was tense and silent. Marcus took a route that looped through half the city, doubling back twice to check for tails. They arrived at the building with 10 minutes to spare. "Last chance to change your mind," Adrian said as they rode the elevator up. "Not happening." "Stubborn." "Committed." Lena straightened her dress, tried to look calm. "There's a difference." The elevator opened onto a floor that looked exactly like every government office ever. Fluorescent lights, industrial carpet, and the faint smell of burnt coffee. A woman in a sensible pantsuit met them in the lobby. "Mr. Voss, Mrs. Voss, I'm Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Park. Thank you for coming." She shook both their hands with the kind of professional warmth that meant nothing. "Right this way." The conference room was bigger than Adrian's lawyer's office, but somehow felt smaller, maybe because of the 3 additional people already seated around the table. 2 men in suits that screamed federal agent, and a woman with sharp eyes and sharper expression. "This is Agent Morrison and Agent Chen from the FBI," Jennifer said, gesturing. "And this is U.S. Attorney Victoria Hammond. She'll be leading the discussion today." Victoria Hammond looked exactly like someone who'd made a career out of putting dangerous men in prison. Mid-50s, steel gray hair, and an expression that suggested she'd heard every excuse and believed none of them. "Mr. Voss," Victoria's voice matched her expression, "I understand you have information about Vincent Caruso's criminal organization." "I do." Adrian pulled out a chair for Lena before taking his own seat. "But before we discuss details, I need certain assurances." "I'm sure you do." Victoria opened a folder, scanned the contents. "Your attorney outlined your demands yesterday. Full immunity for your wife, protection for funds transferred to Mercy General Hospital, and favorable consideration for your own charges pending cooperation." "That's correct." "Let me be clear about something, Mr. Voss. We don't negotiate with criminals. We prosecute them." Victoria closed the folder, met his eyes. "You're not here because we need you. We're here as a courtesy because your attorney suggested you might have information worth our time. But if you think you can walk in here, make demands, and walk out clean, you're mistaken." "Then this meeting is over." Adrian started to stand. "Sit down." Victoria's voice went hard. "I'm not finished." "Neither am I." But Adrian settled back in his chair, his hand finding Lena's under the table. "My wife had nothing to do with any of my business operations. She married me 6 weeks ago in a contractual arrangement to secure funding for her mother's cancer treatment. That's her only connection to any of this." "A contractual arrangement?" Agent Morrison leaned forward. "You mean you paid her to marry you?" "I paid for medical treatment. The marriage was the consideration." "That's called fraud, Mr. Voss. Specifically, marriage fraud." "Is it?" Adrian's expression stayed neutral. "Because the marriage is legal. We live together, attend events together, and—" His thumb traced across Lena's knuckles. "My wife is pregnant with our child." "That sounds fairly legitimate to me." The room went silent. Victoria's eyes sharpened. "You're pregnant, Mrs. Voss?" Lena's mouth went dry. They hadn't planned to mention the pregnancy, hadn't discussed whether that information helped or hurt their case. But Adrian had just thrown it on the table like a grenade, and now everyone was staring at her. "Yes," she managed. 7 weeks. "Congratulations." Victoria's tone suggested she found nothing congratulatory about the situation. "That does complicate things." "It should simplify them," Adrian cut in. "My wife is pregnant and under medical supervision for stress-related complications. Dragging her through interrogations and depositions puts both her and our child at risk. So here's what's going to happen. You grant her full immunity in writing, you guarantee the hospital funds won't be touched, and then we'll discuss what information I have about Caruso." "Or," Victoria asked, "or I walk out of here, the files stay hidden, and you get nothing. We could arrest you right now, seize your assets, freeze your accounts, make your life very difficult." "You could try." Adrian's smile didn't reach his eyes. "But I'm very good at hiding money, and my lawyers are very good at making arrests disappear into procedural hell. You'd spend months fighting to bring charges that might not stick. Or you could agree to my terms and have Vincent Caruso's entire operation handed to you on a silver platter." The prosecutors exchanged glances. Some silent communication passed between them. What exactly do these files contain? Agent Chen asked. Financial records going back 30 years. Names, dates, transaction details, bribes, payoffs, murders for hire. Everything my father and Caruso built together, documented and cross-referenced. Adrian pulled a flash drive from his pocket, set it on the table. This is a sample. 3 months of activity from 5 years ago. Enough to verify authenticity. Agent Morrison reached for the drive, but Victoria stopped him with a raised hand. How do we know it's real? She asked. Run it against your existing investigations. The names will match unsolved cases. The transactions will correspond to known money laundering operations. It's real. Adrian leaned back in his chair. The question is whether you want the rest of it badly enough to meet my terms. Victoria studied him for a long moment. Step outside, Mr. Voss. You too, Mrs. Voss. We need to discuss this privately. The hallway outside the conference room felt like a holding cell. Marcus was waiting near the elevators, his posture alert. Lena paced, her hands twisting together. You shouldn't have told them about the baby, she said quietly. I know. They're going to use it against us. Probably. Adrian caught her hand, stilled her pacing. But it also makes you sympathetic. Harder to threaten a pregnant woman. They'll have to be careful. Or they'll see an opportunity, threaten the baby's safety, use it to make me cooperate. They won't. How do you know? Because Victoria Hammond has 3 daughters. I did my research. Adrian's expression softened slightly. She's hard, but she's not cruel. She'll see you as someone trying to protect their child, same as she would. That's a hell of a gamble. Everything about this situation is a gamble. He pulled her closer, his other hand settling on her stomach. But I meant what I said in there. You and this baby are my priority. Everything else is negotiable. The conference room door opened. Jennifer Park stepped out. They're ready for you, she said. Back at the table, Victoria's expression had shifted from hostile to calculating. Never a good sign. Here's what we're prepared to offer, she said. Full immunity for Mrs. Voss on any and all charges related to your criminal activities, past and present. The hospital funds remain untouched, provided you can demonstrate they came from legitimate sources. I can't, Adrian said flatly. The money was laundered through shell companies. You know it, I know it, but it's already been spent on life-saving medical treatment. Clawing it back serves no purpose except cruelty. The law doesn't care about purpose, Mr. Voss. Then change the law, or at minimum, choose not to enforce it in this instance. Adrian's voice went hard. That money saved a woman's life. That woman is my child's grandmother. You want to tell my pregnant wife that her mother has to stop treatment because you need to make an example? Victoria's jaw tightened. The silence stretched. The hospital funds stay, she said finally. But if we find any evidence that Mrs. Voss knew about or participated in any criminal activities, the immunity is void. She didn't. Then she has nothing to worry about. Victoria turned to Lena. Mrs. Voss, I need to ask you some questions directly. Your husband can be present, but his attorney cannot answer for you. Do you understand? Lena's throat felt tight. Yes. When did you first learn about your husband's connection to organized crime? The question hung in the air like a trap. Lena glanced at Adrian, who gave the smallest nod. After the wedding, Lena said, he told me about the files and Vincent Caruso 3 days ago. Before that, you had no knowledge of his activities? I knew he worked in import-export. I didn't ask for details. Why not? Because it wasn't my business. The marriage was a transaction. I got money for my mother's treatment. He got a wife for appearances. What he did professionally was his concern, not mine. That's remarkably incurious for someone marrying a stranger. I was desperate. Lena's hands clenched in her lap. My mother was dying. The experimental treatment was her only chance, and I couldn't afford it. When Adrian offered the arrangement, I didn't care what he did for a living as long as the money was real. And now that you know the truth? Now I'm pregnant with his child and trying to figure out how to keep everyone alive. Lena met Victoria's eyes. I'm not some criminal mastermind. I'm a woman who made a choice to save her mother and ended up in a situation way more complicated than I bargained for. But I haven't done anything illegal. I married someone, got pregnant, and now I'm sitting here answering questions about things I don't understand. Victoria studied her face.
You really didn't know. No, I really didn't. Another silence, another exchange of glances between the prosecutors. All right, Victoria said finally. The immunity stands. But understand this, Mrs. Voss. If you're lying, if we discover any evidence that contradicts what you've told us today, you'll be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, pregnancy or no pregnancy. I understand. Good. Victoria turned back to Adrian. Now let's talk about the files. Where are they? Safe? That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting until we have everything in writing. Adrian's expression stayed neutral. Full immunity for Lena, hospital funds protected, and I want witness protection. For who? For my wife and child. Once these files go public, Caruso's organization will fracture. Some will scatter, but others will want revenge. I need to know Lena and our baby are somewhere Caruso can't find them. And you? Victoria asked. I'll take my chances. Adrian, Lena started. No. He cut her off, his voice gentle but firm. You and the baby need protection. I need to stay visible, tie up loose ends, make sure the transition from my father's empire to legitimate business is complete. That takes time and presence. It also makes you a target. I've been a target for 5 years. I'm used to it. Victoria watched their exchange with something that might have been understanding. Witness protection for your wife and child. What about you, Mr. Voss? We can offer protection if you're willing to testify. I'll testify remotely if needed, but I'm not hiding. That's foolish. That's final. Adrian's tone left no room for argument. Do we have a deal? The prosecutors huddled, whispered conversations Lena couldn't hear. Minutes crawled by. Finally, Victoria straightened. We'll draw up the paperwork. Full immunity for Mrs. Voss, witness protection available upon request, hospital funds exempt from forfeiture. In exchange, you provide the complete files within 72 hours and make yourself available for testimony as needed. 48 hours, Adrian countered. The longer we wait, the more chance Caruso has to move against us. Fine, 48 hours. Victoria stood, extended her hand. We have a deal, Mr. Voss. Adrian shook it, his expression giving nothing away. I'll have the files delivered tomorrow night. See that you do, because if you're playing us, if those files don't contain what you've promised, this deal evaporates, and we come after you with everything we have. Understood. They left the federal building under gray skies that threatened rain. Marcus had the SUV waiting at the curb, engine running. The drive back to the penthouse was silent until Lena couldn't take it anymore. Witness protection, she said. You're sending me away. I'm keeping you safe. By making me disappear? By taking away my choice? By making sure our child has a mother. Adrian's voice was tight. Caruso won't stop hunting you just because the files are public. If anything, he'll be more desperate. So we run, hide, change our names, and pretend to be other people? If that's what it takes. And you? You just stay here waiting to be killed? I'll be careful. That's not good enough. The words burst out louder than intended. You don't get to make unilateral decisions about our family, Adrian. You don't get to be the hero who sacrifices himself while I hide in some safe house with our baby, wondering if you're alive or dead. What's the alternative? His control finally cracked. Take you and the baby into the crossfire? Watch you get hurt or killed because I was selfish enough to keep you close? The alternative is we figure this out together. We find a way to end the threat permanently, not just delay it. I'm trying to end it. That's what the files do. They destroy Caruso's operation, remove his power base. They also paint a target on your back. Lena grabbed his hand. You need protection too, not just me and the baby, all of us. I can't run my business from witness protection. Then change your business. Go legitimate completely. Move somewhere new, start over. It's not that simple. Why not? Adrian pulled his hand free, looked out the window. Because I owe people. Debts that don't disappear just because I want them to. Obligations that require me to stay visible, stay present. What kind of obligations? The kind that kept you alive 2 nights ago. His voice went flat. I have alliances, Lena. People who've helped me dismantle my father's empire in exchange for protection or money or favors. I can't just abandon them because things got complicated.
So you're choosing them over us. I'm choosing to honor my commitments while keeping you safe. There's a difference. Not from where I'm sitting. The SUV pulled into the underground garage. Marcus killed the engine but didn't move to open the doors, reading the room, giving them privacy. I need you to trust me, Adrian said quietly. Just for a little while. Let me get the files to the prosecutors. Let me make sure Caruso's organization is too fractured to mount a coordinated response. Then we'll talk about next steps. How long is a little while? A few weeks? Maybe a month? A month of me hiding while you expose yourself to danger? A month of our child being safe while I clean up my mess. He turned to face her. Lena, I can't do what needs to be done if I'm constantly worried about you. I need to know you're somewhere Caruso can't reach. Please. The please landed different than the rest of it. Not an order or an expectation, but a request. A plea from a man who didn't know how to ask for things. Where would I go? Lena asked finally. Marcus has a property upstate. Small town, middle of nowhere. Safe house that's been scrubbed clean of any connection to me or my business. You'd have security, medical care, everything you need. Except you. I'd visit when I could. When you could. Lena's laugh was bitter. That's not a family, Adrian. That's you keeping me on a shelf until you decide it's safe to take me down. That's me trying to keep you alive. And what about you? Her voice cracked. What happens when Caruso sends someone after you and you don't have backup because you've isolated yourself? What happens when you make one wrong move and end up dead because you were too proud or too stubborn to accept help? Then you and the baby are still safe. That's what matters. You matter! The words echoed in the confined space. You matter, Adrian. Not just as the father of my child or the man who saved my mother. You matter to me. And I'm not going to sit in some safe house pretending I'm okay with you risking your life alone. Adrian stared at her, something raw and unguarded in his expression. When did this happen? When did what happen? When did you start caring whether I lived or died? Lena opened her mouth, closed it. Because she didn't know the exact moment. Maybe it was the night he'd found her collapsed. Maybe it was watching him negotiate with prosecutors for her immunity. Maybe it was the way he touched her stomach like their impossible baby was the most precious thing in the world. Or maybe it had been happening gradually since the beginning, and she'd just been too scared to notice. I don't know, she admitted, but I do care. And that means I don't get to take the easy way out while you handle everything alone. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached for her hand, threaded their fingers together. 24 hours, he said. Give me 24 hours to deliver the files and set certain things in motion. After that, we'll make decisions together. No more unilateral moves. Promise? I promise. He kissed her knuckles. But tonight, you stay in the penthouse with extra security while I make sure the files are properly secured for delivery. Where are they? Somewhere no one would think to look. Adrian smiled slightly. Not even Marcus knows. That's either brilliant or paranoid. In my world, there's not much difference. They took the elevator up together, Marcus trailing behind with his phone already out, presumably arranging the extra security Adrian had mentioned. The penthouse looked exactly the same as when they'd left, pristine, untouched, and vaguely hostile in its perfection. I'm going to change out of this dress before I lose my mind, Lena said. Then I'm eating everything in the refrigerator because apparently pregnancy means I'm starving constantly. Dr. Chen said small meals throughout the day. Dr. Chen isn't growing a person. I'll eat how I want. Adrian's smile was tired but genuine. Noted. Lena changed into leggings and one of Adrian's t-shirts that was becoming her uniform, then raided the kitchen for anything that looked appealing. She ended up with a weird combination of leftover pasta, apple slices, and cheese that probably cost more per ounce than gold. The baby had opinions about food these days, and those opinions changed hourly. She was halfway through her meal when Adrian appeared in the kitchen doorway, dressed down in jeans and a dark shirt. I'm heading out for a few hours, he said. Lena set down her fork. To get the files. To retrieve them, yes. And to have a conversation with someone who might have information about the leak. The person who helped Caruso's men into the building. That's the theory. Adrian moved closer, brushed hair back from her face. Marcus is staying here with you. 2 additional guards on the elevator, 2 more in the lobby. You're safe. When will you be back? before midnight. Adrian, she caught his hand. Be careful. Always am. But his expression softened. Get some rest. You look exhausted.
I feel exhausted. This baby is already a demanding roommate, just like their mother. Careful. I can still throw pasta at you. His laugh was quiet, genuine. Then he kissed her, quick and careful, like sealing a promise, and was gone. Lena finished her meal alone in the too-big kitchen, listening to Marcus move around the penthouse, checking locks and cameras. The exhaustion Adrian had mentioned pulled at her bones, but sleep felt impossible.
Her mind kept circling back to witness protection, to safe houses, to a future where she raised their child without him. She couldn't do it. Couldn't hide while he fought alone. So she'd give him his 24 hours. But after that, they were doing this together. Or not at all. Adrian came back at 11:47 with blood on his knuckles and a locked briefcase that probably contained the end of everything. Lena was still awake, curled up on the couch, pretending to read, but really just staring at the same page for an hour. You're hurt, she said, standing. It's nothing. But he let her take his hand, examine the split skin across his knuckles. This is not nothing. What happened? Found the leak. He didn't want to talk. Adrian's voice was flat, empty. He talked eventually. Lena didn't ask what eventually meant. She led him to the kitchen, ran cold water over his knuckles, wrapped them in a clean towel. The silence between them felt heavy with things neither knew how to say. The files? She finally asked. Adrian nodded toward the briefcase he'd set on the counter. Everything, 30 years of my father's empire, documented and cross-referenced. Enough to put away half the organized crime on the East Coast. You? Some of it implicates me. The early years before I started dismantling everything. But my lawyers think we can argue I was cleaning up, not participating. He pulled his hand from the towel, flexed his fingers. Won't know for sure until the prosecutors see it all. When are you delivering it? Tomorrow night? Public drop at a location of their choosing. Adrian moved to pour himself a drink, stopped. Actually, I think I'm done with whiskey for a while. It makes me do stupid things. Like marry strangers? Like fall for them. The words came out quiet, almost accidental. Adrian's back was to her, so Lena couldn't see his expression, but his shoulders tensed like he'd revealed something he hadn't meant to. Adrian, don't. He turned and his face was carefully blank again. Don't make this more complicated than it already is. You just said you fell for me. That's pretty complicated all by itself. I said the whiskey made me fall for you. Past tense. Drunken mistake, remember? You're not drunk now. No, I'm exhausted and terrified and about to hand over evidence that might send me to prison, so forgive me if I'm not thinking clearly. But his eyes told a different story, sharp and aware and absolutely sober. Lena crossed the space between them, put both hands on his chest. His heart hammered under her palms. Say it again, she said, without the deflection this time. Lena, say it. Adrian stared at her for a long moment. Then something in him cracked, and he cupped her face with his bandaged hands. I'm falling for you, he said quietly. Have been since that night at the gala, maybe before. Every time you push back, every time you refuse to be intimidated, every time you choose to stay when leaving would be easier. You're the strongest person I've ever met, and I don't deserve you, but I'm too selfish to let you go. The words settled into Lena's chest like warmth spreading through cold water. Good thing I'm not planning to leave then. Even if I go to prison? Even then. She pulled him down until their foreheads touched. We're in this together now. All of it. The good, the terrible, and whatever comes after, you hand over those files. Adrian kissed her, and it was different from before. Desperate and gentle and tasting like promises neither of them knew if they could keep. His hand slid into her hair, hers fisted in his shirt, and for a moment the world narrowed to just this. Just them. Just the impossible baby between them and the future they were trying to build from wreckage. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. 24 hours, he murmured. Then everything changes. Then we change with it. They slept in Adrian's bed that night, tangled together like they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. Lena woke twice to Adrian's phone buzzing. Marcus with updates, security reports, things she didn't ask about. The third time she woke, pale light was filtering through the bulletproof windows, and Adrian was already up, standing at the window in just his boxers, staring at the city. "You're thinking too loud," Lena said. "I can hear it from here." He glanced back, almost smiled. "Sorry. Trying to run contingencies." "For what?" "Everything. The drop tonight," Caruso's response. "What happens after?" Adrian moved back to the bed, sat on the edge. Marcus got word that Caruso's been making moves, consolidating his people, calling in debts. He knows something's coming. How would he know? The leak probably told him before I convinced him to stop breathing. Adrian's voice stayed neutral, but his bandaged knuckles told the real story. Which means tonight's going to be dangerous. Caruso will try to stop the drop, retrieve the files, eliminate the threat. So we'll have extra security. I'll have extra security. You're staying here. We already had this argument. And we're having it again? Adrian turned to face her fully. I can't do what needs to be done if I'm worried about you. Please, Lena. Just this once, stay behind where it's safe. She wanted to argue, wanted to insist on being there, facing it together. But the exhaustion in Adrian's eyes stopped her. He was carrying too much already. The files, the danger, the weight of protecting her and their baby. Maybe giving him this one thing, letting him have one less worry, was the right choice. Fine, she said, but you call me the second it's done. Deal. Relief flooded his expression. Thank you. The day crawled by with the kind of excruciating slowness that only came from waiting for something terrible to happen. Adrian spent most of it on the phone with lawyers and Marcus and people Lena didn't know. She tried to distract herself with television, with reading, with anything that would stop her mind from spinning worst-case scenarios. At 4, Dr. Chen arrived for a checkup Lena had forgotten was scheduled. The doctor did her usual routine, blood pressure, weight, listening to the baby's heartbeat with a Doppler that made Lena's chest tight every time. Everything looks good, doctor, Chen said, packing up her equipment. Baby's growing right on schedule. Your blood work is normal. How are you feeling? Terrified, Lena admitted, but I don't think that's pregnancy-related. Stress isn't good for you or the baby. Dr. Chen's expression softened. I know your situation is complicated, Mrs. Voss, but you need to find ways to manage your anxiety, for the baby's sake. I'm trying. Try harder. Dr. Chen stood. And call me if anything changes. Any cramping, bleeding, anything concerning at all. After the doctor left, Lena found Adrian in his office, surrounded by papers and looking more stressed than she'd ever seen him. Dr. Chen says I need to relax, she said from the doorway. Join the club. Adrian didn't look up from whatever he was reading. Marcus says I need to sleep more. My lawyers say I need to stop making unilateral decisions, and you say I need to let you help more. Everyone's got opinions. Maybe you should listen to some of them. Maybe. He finally looked up, and the exhaustion in his eyes made her heart hurt. After tonight, once the files are delivered and Caruso's organization is in shambles, I'll sleep for a week. Promise? I promise. Adrian stood, cross to her. You should eat something. The chef made your favorite pasta. I'm not hungry. The baby needs food. The baby will survive a few more hours. But Lena let him lead her to the kitchen anyway. Let him pile food on a plate she didn't want. Let him hover like she was made of glass. They ate in silence, the tension building with each passing minute. At 7, Marcus appeared in the doorway. It's time, he said. Adrian nodded, set down his fork. He'd already changed into tactical gear, black cargo pants, dark shirt, vest that probably had armor built in. He looked dangerous, incompetent, and absolutely terrified, though he was trying to hide it. Stay here, he said to Lena. Don't answer the door for anyone except Marcus or me. There are panic buttons in every room. If anything feels wrong, hit one and the entire building goes into lockdown. I know. You've told me 3 times. I'm telling you again. He pulled her into his arms, held her tight enough that she could feel his heart racing. I love you. I need you to know that. Whatever happens tonight, I love you. The words should have made her happy. Instead, they felt like goodbye. Don't, Lena said against his chest. Don't say it like you're not coming back. I'm coming back, but in case I don't... No. She pulled back, grabbed his face. You're coming back. You're going to deliver those files, watch the prosecutors take them, and come home to me and our baby. That's what's happening. Understand? Adrian's smile was sad. Understood. He kissed her one more time, long and deep and tasting like desperation. Then he was gone. Marcus followed, leaving 2 guards stationed outside the penthouse door and Lena alone with her terror. The minutes turned into hours. Lena paced, checked her phone obsessively, wore a path in the expensive carpet. At 9, she called Adrian. No answer. At 9:30, she tried Marcus. Voicemail. By 10, she was ready to break every promise she'd made and go after them herself. Then her phone rang. Unknown number.
Hello? Mrs. Voss. The voice was smooth, cold, and definitely not Adrian. I believe your husband has something that belongs to me. Lena's blood turned to ice. Who is this? Vincent Caruso, though I imagine Adrian's mentioned me. A pause, heavy with menace. Your husband is currently surrounded by my men at the drop location. The federal agents who were supposed to receive the files are dead, and unless you do exactly what I say, Adrian will be too. You're lying.
Am I? Ask him yourself. Sound of movement, then Adrian's voice, strained and furious. Don't listen to him, Lena. Don't. A thud. A grunt of pain. Adrian! Lena's hand tightened on the phone. He's alive, Caruso said calmly. For now. But that can change very quickly. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to bring me those files, the real ones, not the copies your husband was planning to hand over. I know he keeps the originals somewhere only he can access, and I'm betting you know where. I don't. Then figure it out. You have 1 hour. If you're late, or if you contact anyone, your husband dies. If you try to involve the police, your husband dies. If you do anything except bring me those files, your husband dies. Do we understand each other? Where? Lena's voice came out surprisingly steady. Caruso gave her an address in a warehouse district Lena vaguely recognized. 1 hour, Mrs. Voss. The clock is ticking. The line went dead. Lena stood frozen for approximately 3 seconds. Then she was moving, her mind racing through options. Call the police. No, Caruso would know. Call Marcus. His phone was going straight to voicemail, which meant he was either captured or dead. Wait for rescue. But who would come? Everyone who could help was already at the drop site, already in Caruso's trap, which left one option, one absolutely insane, probably suicidal option. Find the files and trade them for Adrian's life. Lena tore through the penthouse, checking every hiding place she could think of. Adrian's office, his bedroom, the panic room. Nothing. The files weren't here. He'd said they were somewhere no one would think to look, somewhere even Marcus didn't know about. She was about to give up when her eyes landed on something she'd never really paid attention to, a photo on Adrian's nightstand. Him as a kid, maybe 8 or 9, with an older woman who must have been his mother. They were standing in front of a small house with a garden. Lena picked up the photo, studied it. On the back, written in faded ink, Grandma's house, summer 2001. Grandma's house, a place from Adrian's childhood, somewhere no one would think to look because no one knew it existed. She grabbed her phone, pulled up a property search database she'd used back when she was helping her mother look for cheaper apartments. Typed in Adrian's grandmother's name. She'd heard him mention it once, Elena Voss, cross-referenced with addresses in the area. One hit, a small property in Queens purchased 40 years ago, still in Elena Voss's name despite her death 5 years earlier, the same year Adrian's father died. That had to be it. Lena checked the time. 43 minutes left. The property was 30 minutes away if traffic was clear, which meant she had 13 minutes to get there, find the files, and get back. It was impossible. She was going anyway. The guards outside tried to stop her. Mrs. Voss, Mr. Voss said you weren't to leave. Mr. Voss is in trouble. Either help me or get out of my way. The authority in her voice surprised even her. They exchanged glances, then one pulled out his keys. I'll drive. The ride to Queens was a blur of streetlights and racing thoughts. Lena used the time to call Victoria Hammond, leave a voicemail explaining everything, Caruso's trap, the location, the demand. It might not help, but at least someone would know what happened if this all went sideways.
The house was exactly like the photo, small, dated, with a garden that had gone wild years ago. The guard picked the lock in under a minute, and they were inside. "What are we looking for?" he asked. "A briefcase, maybe. Or a safe. Something that would hold 30 years of files." Lena moved through the house, checking every room. Nothing in the living room, nothing in the kitchen. Then she found it in the bedroom closet, a floor safe, combination lock, exactly the kind of thing Adrian would use. But she didn't have the combination. "Can you open it?" she asked the guard. "Not without tools, and we don't have time." Lena stared at the safe, her mind racing. Think. What would Adrian use as a combination? Something memorable, but not obvious. Not his birthday or his father's. Something personal. Her eyes fell on the photo she'd brought with her. Summer 2001. She tried the combination 07-15-01. Nothing. Tried again. 08-01-01. The safe clicked open. Inside was a briefcase, leather and old and heavy with files. Lena grabbed it, didn't bother checking the contents. 27 minutes had passed. They made it back to the warehouse district with 4 minutes to spare. The building Caruso had specified was dark, abandoned looking. Lena's guard pulled up to the entrance. "I'm coming with you," he said. "No. If something happens, someone needs to tell Victoria Hammond where the files are." Lena gripped the briefcase. "Promise me, whatever happens, these files get to the prosecutors." "Mrs. Voss, promise me." He nodded reluctantly. "I promise." Lena got out of his car, walked toward the warehouse entrance on legs that threatened to give out. The door was unlocked. Inside, the space was cavernous and dark, lit only by work lights that created pools of illumination in the darkness. In the center of the largest pool, Adrian knelt with his hands zip-tied behind his back and blood streaming from a cut above his eye. Marcus was beside him, similarly restrained. 6 of Caruso's men surrounded them, all armed, and standing in front of them, looking pleased with himself, was Vincent Caruso. He was older than Lena expected, mid-60s, gray hair, expensive suit. He looked like someone's grandfather, not a crime lord, but his eyes were cold and calculating as they fixed on her. "Mrs. Voss, right on time." Caruso smiled. "You brought the files?" "Let them go first." "I don't think you're in a position to negotiate." But Caruso nodded to one of his men, who cut Adrian's zip ties. Adrian was on his feet immediately, moving toward Lena despite the guns trained on him. "You shouldn't be here. The baby is fine." Lena held up the briefcase. "Here are your files, Mr. Caruso. Everything my husband's father documented. 30 years of evidence. It's all yours." "Lena, don't," Adrian started. "Hand it over," Caruso said. Lena walked forward slowly, the briefcase heavy in her hands. She stopped 10 feet from Caruso, set it on the ground between them. "Open it," Caruso ordered. She did. Inside, the files were organized by year, labeled, and cross-referenced exactly as Adrian had described. Caruso's man checked the top few, nodded confirmation. "Very good." Caruso's smile widened. "Now then, I'm afraid I can't let any of you leave. You understand? Too many loose ends, too much risk. But I'll make it quick. That's more mercy than your husband showed my men over the years." "Wait," Lena's voice cut through the warehouse. "There's a problem with your plan." "Oh?" "These aren't the only copies." She met Caruso's eyes. "What, you thought Adrian was stupid enough to keep everything in one place? There are digital backups, cloud storage, thumb drives hidden in 3 different countries. If anything happens to us, they automatically get released to every major news outlet and law enforcement agency on the East Coast." It was a complete lie. But she sold it with everything she had. Caruso's expression darkened. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Test it. Kill us and see what happens." Lena took a step closer. "Or you could let us walk out of here, take the physical files, and disappear. Start over somewhere the evidence can't reach you. Because once those backups get released, every cop and federal agent in the region will be hunting you. Your empire ends either way. The only question is whether you're free or in prison when it happens." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Caruso laughed. "You've got guts, Mrs. Voss. I'll give you that." He turned to Adrian. "She always like this?" "Pretty much," Adrian said tightly. "Then you're a lucky man." Caruso nodded to his men. "Let them go." "Boss," one of them started. I said let them go. Caruso picked up the briefcase. We're taking these and leaving the city tonight. By the time those supposed backups get released, I'll be somewhere without an extradition treaty. There's just one problem with that plan, a new voice said. Victoria Hammond stepped out of the shadows, followed by a dozen federal agents with weapons drawn. Vincent Caruso, you're under arrest. Everything happened at once. Caruso's men reached for weapons. The agents shouted orders. Adrian threw himself in front of Lena as gunfire erupted. She hit the ground hard, Adrian's body covering hers, his arms protecting her head. The shooting lasted maybe 15 seconds, but felt like hours. Then silence, broken only by ringing ears and shouted commands. Clear, someone yelled. Adrian pulled back carefully, checked Lena over. Are you hurt? No. Are you? I'm fine. But his hands were shaking as he helped her stand. Around them, Caruso's men were being cuffed and dragged away. Caruso himself was on the ground, blood spreading from a shoulder wound. Marcus was up, arguing with an agent about his restraints. Victoria Hammond approached, her expression somewhere between fury and grudging respect. That was incredibly stupid, Mrs. Voss. But it worked, Lena said. You could have been killed, you and your baby. But we weren't. Lena leaned into Adrian, suddenly exhausted. And now you have Caruso and the files. Everyone wins. Except the part where you almost gave me a heart attack, Adrian muttered. What were you thinking? I was thinking you were about to die and I wasn't going to let that happen. Lena looked up at him. You would have done the same for me. That's different. How? Because he stopped, pulled her into his arms. Because you're carrying my child and you're supposed to stay safe and I can't lose you. Then stop putting yourself in situations where I have to rescue you. Deal. His laugh was shaky. How did you find the files? Your grandmother's house. The photo on your nightstand. Adrian stared at her. You figured that out in under an hour? Turns out I'm smarter than you give me credit for. I'm starting to realize that. He kissed her forehead. Also, that thing about digital backups was brilliant. Completely terrified me because I thought for a second you'd actually found them, but brilliant. There are no backups? There are, but they're not set to auto-release. That would be insane. Adrian's smile was exhausted. You lied to a crime lord while pregnant and surrounded by guns. I don't know whether to be impressed or terrified. Both works. They spent the next 3 hours giving statements, answering questions, and watching federal agents cart away evidence and bodies. By the time they made it back to the penthouse, dawn was breaking over the city. Lena collapsed on the couch, every muscle in her body screaming. Adrian sank down beside her, pulled her against his chest. It's over, he said quietly. Caruso's in custody, his organization is crumbling, the files are with the prosecutors. It's actually over. What happens to you? My lawyers are negotiating. The evidence shows I was dismantling my father's operations, not expanding them. Combined with my cooperation, they think I'll avoid prison time. Community service, probably. Fines, but no prison. And the hospital money? Protected. Victoria agreed to exempt it from forfeiture in exchange for my testimony. Adrian's hand settled on her stomach. Your mother's safe? The baby's safe. You're safe. The words settled into Lena like warmth after cold. We did it. You did it. I was just along for the ride. That's not true. It is, though. Adrian shifted to look at her. You saved me tonight. Not the other way around. You figured out where the files were, you faced down Caruso. You bought time for the FBI to arrive. I was useless. You were protecting Marcus, and you threw yourself over me during the shooting. Anyone would have done that. But you did it. Lena touched his face. We protected each other. That's how this works. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled a small box from his pocket. I've been carrying this around for 3 days trying to find the right moment. Figured there's never going to be a perfect time, so. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a single diamond that caught the dawn light. We're already married, Lena said, her throat tight. We signed papers in a lawyer's office. That's not a marriage. Adrian took the ring out, held it between them. Lena Carter, will you actually marry me? Not for money or contracts or protection, but because I love you, and you love me.
And we're having a baby that shouldn't exist. Will you marry me for real? The tears came fast and unexpected. Yes. Yes, you idiot. Of course I'll marry you. Adrian slid the ring onto her finger, then kissed her like he'd been waiting his whole life to do it. When they broke apart, both were crying, both were laughing, both were holding each other like they'd never let go. I have a condition, Lena said. What? When we get married for real, my mother has to be there. And it has to be somewhere nice, with flowers and music and all the things we skipped the first time. Done. Adrian kissed her again. Anything else? Yes. I want you to go legitimate, completely. No more gray areas, no more questionable business deals. I want our child to have a father who doesn't have to look over his shoulder. Already working on it. I've been setting up a foundation, nonprofit work, helping victims of trafficking and exploitation. Figured I should use my knowledge of the criminal world to actually help people. That's perfect. Yeah? Adrian's smile was tentative. Because I also thought we could relocate. Get out of the city, find somewhere quieter, maybe that house upstate. Give the baby space to grow up. And we do what exactly? Farm? I don't know. Figure it out together. He pulled her closer. All I know is I'm done with this life. I want a new one. With you. 3 months later, Lena stood in her mother's hospital room watching spring rain streak the windows. Her mother looked better than she had in over a year. The treatment was working, the cancer in retreat. She'd be discharged next week. You're glowing, her mother said. Pregnancy suits you. Lena touched her stomach, now unmistakably round. The baby's active today. Adrian thinks it's a girl. And you? I think I don't care as long as they're healthy. Lena sat on the edge of the bed. We set a date for the wedding, June 15th. That's fast. I'll be 6 months pregnant. Any later and I'll be too uncomfortable to enjoy it. Lena pulled out her phone, showed her mother photos of the venue, a garden estate upstate, all flowers and natural light. Adrian let me plan everything, said he just wants to show up and marry me. Her mother studied the photos, her eyes shining. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Your father would be so proud. I wish he was here. Me too. Her mother squeezed Lena's hand. But you've built something amazing. A family, a future. You saved my life and found yours in the process. I almost got us all killed in the process. But you didn't. You survived, and that's what matters. Her mother's smile was warm. Now go home to your husband. You look exhausted. Adrian was waiting in the car outside, drumming his fingers on the steering wheel in a way that meant he was anxious about something. He'd been doing that a lot lately, small tells that showed the controlled facade was slipping, that he was learning to actually feel things instead of managing them. How is she? He asked as Lena got in. Good, getting stronger every day. Lena buckled her seatbelt, adjusted it around her stomach. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Adrian, I know you now. What's wrong? He pulled out into traffic before answering. The prosecutor's office called. They want me to testify at Caruso's trial next month. And I'm worried about leaving you and the baby, even for a few hours. We'll be fine. Marcus will be there, and your entire security team, and probably my mother hovering like a nervous grandmother. I know. Logically, I know that. Adrian's hand found hers. But logic and fear are different things. You're scared something will happen. I'm terrified something will happen. Every day I wake up waiting for the other shoe to drop, for someone from Caruso's organization to come after us, for the immunity deal to fall apart. He pulled into their building's garage, killed the engine. I keep thinking this is too good to be true, that we don't get the happy ending. Lena turned to face him fully. Adrian Voss, listen to me. We earned this, both of us. We fought and nearly died and made impossible choices to get here. We're allowed to be happy. We're allowed to have the life we want. Are we? Yes. She took his face in her hands. You're not your father. You're not defined by what he built or what you had to destroy. You're just Adrian, the man I love, the father of my child, the person I chose, and nothing is going to change that. His eyes closed, and when they opened again, they were wet. I don't deserve you. Good thing I'm not going anywhere then? They went upstairs together to the penthouse that would be theirs for another month before they moved to the house upstate. The space felt different now, less like a prison, more like a home. There were baby catalogs on the coffee table, paint swatches scattered across the kitchen counter, evidence of a future being built one small choice at a time. That night, Lena woke to Adrian's hand on her stomach, feeling their daughter kick. Because they'd found out last week, a girl, healthy and strong and active. She's going to be just like you, Adrian murmured in the dark, stubborn and fearless and impossibly strong. Let's hope she gets your patience. I'm not patient. You waited for me, even when I was being difficult and pushing you away. That's patience. Lena covered his hand with hers. What should we name her? I've been thinking about that. Adrian shifted closer. Elena, after my grandmother. The one whose house saved us? Yeah, seemed fitting. He paused. But only if you like it. Elena Voss. Lena tested the name, felt it settle into place. I love it. Good, because I already ordered the nursery sign with her name on it. You what? Lena turned to face him. Adrian, we hadn't decided. I know, but I had a feeling. His smile was visible in the dim light. Call it instinct. Call it presumptuous. That too. The wedding came faster than either of them expected. June 15th arrived with clear skies and perfect weather, the kind of day that felt designed for new beginnings. Lena's mother walked her down the aisle, slowly, carefully, but under her own power. Adrian waited at the altar in a suit that made him look less like a former crime boss and more like someone who'd learned how to hope. Marcus stood as best man. Dr. Chen was in the front row with Victoria Hammond, who'd become an unlikely ally. The guest list was small, people they trusted, people who'd helped them survive. The ceremony was simple. No elaborate vows, no grand gestures. Just two people promising to choose each other every day, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. I love you, Adrian said when it was his turn. I loved you when you were just a contract. I loved you when you saved my life. I love you now, carrying our daughter, and I'll love you tomorrow and every day after. Lena's turn. I love you too, even when you're overprotective and secretive and making decisions without consulting me. A ripple of laughter from their guests. You gave me everything I needed to save my mother, but more than that, you gave me a reason to want to be saved. So thank you for choosing me, for fighting for us, for being the father our daughter deserves. They sealed it with a kiss that tasted like tears and laughter and forever. The reception was held in the garden, under string lights and open sky. Lena danced with her mother, careful and slow. Adrian danced with his daughter, hands on Lena's stomach, swaying to music only they could hear. This is it, Lena said against his chest. This is the life we get. And it's enough. It's everything. 2 months later, at 38 weeks pregnant, Lena's water broke in the middle of the night. Adrian drove to the hospital like a man possessed, breaking probably a dozen traffic laws and not caring even a little. Dr. Chen was waiting when they arrived, calm and professional, and everything Lena needed. Labor lasted 14 hours. 14 hours of pain and fear, and Adrian holding her hand, murmuring encouragement, refusing to leave even when she told him he was useless. Elena Marie Voss came into the world at 6:17 in the morning, screaming and perfect and impossibly tiny. Adrian cried, actual tears streaming down his face as he held his daughter